This is the best
Do you hear me?
of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
And we welcome you to another day. It is Tuesday. Glad you're here. Much to do today. And we appreciate you dropping by here on a Tuesday afternoon. We will get to your calls in a moment. You want to start lining up the phone calls now. You can get in 855-242-7285. What about this? Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, meeting with reporters yesterday, saying the SEC will continue a healthy dialogue regarding in-stadium alcohol sale policy. Meanwhile, Tennessee football legend Philip Fulmer quickly finding success in an athletic director role. This is an article that we will be talking about later on. It was just a couple of months, it was a year ago, I should say, where Philip Fulmer was passed over for that job. The new athletic director, John Curry, didn't make it out of the first year, fired after a disastrous coaching search. And most believe Philip Fulmer has brought respect and integrity back to a program that was in desperate need of it. We'll talk about that later in the show. Can Mississippi State really win double-digit games? That is a big conversation. We have a guest on who has a pretty strong take. We've been talking about that new program under Joe Moorhead, left a pretty good team behind, or at least Dan Mullen did. We'll talk about it in a moment. And a lot to do. Yesterday we started hearing from the entire Big Ten after a throwaway line about Ohio State playing an easy schedule seemed to upset all the boys up in the big Rust Belt. We'll continue that conversation. More on the Hugh Freeze not being able to go to Alabama and four other SEC schools. I was on Outside the Lines earlier today talking about that. That story generating a lot of conversation emanating out of an AL.com story by John Talty and Matt Zenitz. And certainly the aforementioned alcohol policy story. All of these topics for conversation right here. And Connor O'Gara will join us from SDS, Saturday Down South. He will be with us in a few minutes. Dave Bartoo from CFB Matriz. And Mike Griffith on Philip Fulmer. Who would have ever thought in 2018 we would be talking about Philip Fulmer getting an extension as athletic director? We'll join Mike a little bit later on. But your phone calls now at 855-242-7285. Let's start with Steve in Chicago. And, Steve, we say hello to you on this afternoon. Good afternoon.
How you doing? How warm is it down there, Paul?
We're doing great. Thank you for the call.
It's 40 degrees. You've probably heard me. It's about the third time I've been on the show.
I'm really glad to hear it.
I live in Big Ten country, but really, the SEC is the best conference in the country, period, hands down.
You know, it's easier if Big Ten fans would just go ahead and repeat after you and admit that. They wouldn't have so much heartburn trying to defend and define the likes of Jim Harbaugh and Urban Meyer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. What does the Big Ten have? All they got is Wisconsin, and they lose every year when they get in the Big Ten. They stink. Just like Ohio State, they stink. They cry all the time because they have nothing else better to do because it's too cold. Life is too short. You don't need to have all this.
Yeah, when Major League Baseball games are canceled on the 16th of April in Chicago because of snow and ice and rain and it's cold, then why would you want to go to school up there in a colder month in April?
I do tickets out over there, and it's like Wrigley Field is just too cold. I mean, these guys got to cut down the baseball season too.
How bad? Tell me this: a night game at Wrigley in the spring. I mean, how bad is it out there?
It's not bad in the summer.
Well, I'm not talking about the summer. I'm talking about the spring.
Oh, spring? Oh, yeah, it's cold out there. It's
I've been there in the summer.
28 degrees.
That's 28. Ridiculous. Insane.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But I do tickets in the South, too, and you know what? I'm a big Bama fan. There's so many Bama bars in this town. There's more Bama bars than Big Ten bars.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, there's like one down the street from Wrigley Field by Roscoe and Clark. There's a Bama bar there. That's pretty big. I mean, that's a big Bama bar.
So when you say Bama bar, you mean Bama fans congregate watching? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's the truth. But nobody realizes that because we're in Big Ten country. All they have is Harbaugh and Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer has a week.
Hey, let me ask you a question. Does the I'm sure they have a Michigan bar, right?
Yeah, they got tons of them.
Now, does the Michigan bars do they hand out Kleenex afterwards so the fans can cry?
Yeah, they need issue. They got a lot of issues. They need tissue.
Okay.
They need a lot of tissue.
Yeah, one of the Big Ten bars needs to hand out tissues. The other one needs to hand out Luden's cough drops when their favorite team chokes away a victory.
I agree with you. 100%. This is the Big Ten.
And I'm sure there are plenty of Notre Dame bars. I've been to Chicago.
Oh, there's plenty of those. There's plenty of those.
So when Brian Kelly blows a big game against Miami or someone like that, how do they handle
Florida
that?
State.
Yeah, whatever.
Or Florida State.
Any big game, really.
They blame about the refs. They blame the refs for the game.
Yeah.
Or they blame the coach because he didn't call the right call. It's just the way they are. As far as I'm concerned, the best conference in the country is the SEC.
You got it. Hey, listen, we need to hire you as our Big Ten spokesperson.
Oh, you can hire me anytime you want. Because
have your people call our people, okay?
You got it, sir.
Hey, Steve, a pleasure. Thanks for starting us off today on a positive note.
You're welcome. All right, Paul.
Steve from Chi-Town calling. Let's go from Chicago to Georgia. Matt, what's up?
That was an awful call. I hope there's no University of Georgia bars in Chicago. I do know one thing. When we go to Notre Dame, we pack the house, though, don't we, Paul?
Sure do.
I think last year we had about 60,000 at Touchdown Jesus. But what I was going to say, Paul, is the character of the Alabama, the coaches. I mean, you reported yesterday that Alabama and 4 other programs didn't hire Hugh Freeze because the SEC the commissioner didn't allow them.
Well, let me make it clear. True? The commissioner does not have the right or the power to say no. The commissioner is in an advisory role. There is a stipulation in the SEC bylaws, I'm reading it right now, that says a school must contact the SEC about an individual who has a history of major NCAA infractions. Now, if you talk to Hugh Freeze, you act like the guy may have accidentally run a red light. But he was the steward of a program that had major sanctions. Now, again, they're still under appeal. And let's not forget that Hugh Freeze was not fired by the university because of these things. Hugh Freeze was fired because he got caught using an escort service.
You're correct, but what I will say about the University of Georgia and the people who run it, we have things called morals and values, and we won't, Greg McGarity won't just hire. He won't let Kirby Smart hire just anybody. He won't let him hire a guy with a record. I'd rather win with class than win hiring people that are questionable and don't have good character.
By the way, Matt, you guys, Matt, let me ask you, Matt. Let me ask you a question, okay?
Okay.
You're a young guy, so you may not remember. Do you remember the person that Greg McGarity replaced at Georgia?
Yeah, he's from Gainesville, Georgia, and he's a close personal friend.
And you remember what was his name?
He was removed from the position, Paul.
Yeah,
that's why we don't put up with that.
I just wanted to remind you of that, though. You did hire him, though.
Yeah, but we got rid of him as soon as he got the DUI.
Well, Matt, it was not like getting a DUI. There was a little more to it than that, wasn't there?
He got pulled over. I know Damon Evans. And I know his dad very well. He got pulled over in Atlanta, Georgia's Buckhead with a mistress.
Yeah, okay.
And he tried to work himself out of it and got a DUI with the girl. I remember very well. I know Damon. Damon now lives in Boston. Him and his family moved to Boston.
No, I just want, but before you start talking about, you don't hire, I mean.
But what I'm telling you, Paul, is we got rid of him. We didn't go hire that guy. Y'all hired Sarkisian, and I say that as you as Alabama because you support him. Y'all hired Sarkisian, who had a daggum DUI. Y'all hire anybody
well, listen,
to win.
I mean, Sarkisian to me. I mean, Nick Saban
had. Hey, it's just like when we got on the show about Hugh Freeze, Paul. We got on the show about Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze screwed up Ole Miss, and you had 300 callers saying, "Oh, let's hire Hugh. He didn't do anything wrong. It's not proven."
Well, no, hey, yeah, Matt.
But Alabama turned him in. I'm just saying, I rather not win a national championship and win it the right way than win it cheating and pushing the rules and hiring a bunch of questionable
Hey, let me ask you a question.
That's the difference between the University of Alabama and the University of Georgia, Paul. You know it. How many people on our
hey, by the way,
have a bad record?
Matt, are we going to have a conversation? Because if we are, you're going to have to learn punctuation, and by that I mean a period at some point has to come after about 500 run-on words.
Get my point across, because you like to change the subject.
Answer me this question, will you? Will you answer me a question?
My name's Matt. Yes, sir.
Where did Greg McGarity in the University of Georgia find Kirby Smart?
Where did he go to college?
And you cannot say he went to college. Where did you hire him from?
It's the same time
the University of Alabama, question. Nick Saban, the same guy you've just been attacking for the last 10 minutes.
Okay, but let me ask you a question. You did the same. You're trying to do the same number when I asked you if Nick Saban won an SEC championship his second year. You're like, no, but he won his third. So I'll answer the question, but you're doing the same thing, Paul. You're changing the subject.
Well, no.
My point.
No, the difference between you and me is I rarely get to talk during your calls because you never stop talking.
Well, your reason why is because you're so daggum Alabama biased. I mean, Lord God, do you ever go back to Knoxville?
Let me ask you a question. Yeah, I was back there this year for the Georgia game.
Yeah. Too bad.
By the way, I haven't been back since.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. But I never forget. I was at that game too, and I had a close friend went up to Bill Fulmer and said you may need to put your coaching boots on in about 5 weeks.
So let me ask you this: you're talking about I can't remember what you were talking about. I'm talking about. What I'm talking about. Or you said you'd rather not win than win the right way. Hey, let me ask you a question, Matt. I haven't had a chance to talk about it. What was the story about this equipment manager at UGA a couple weeks ago?
You got rid of him, Paul.
What was he doing?
He had cameras. Got rid of him.
And how did he get the job?
Paul,
can you imagine if that had been at Alabama?
But Paul, we didn't hire that guy. We didn't go hire someone with a DUI.
No. How did the equipment manager who had 4 cameras in the locker room? How did he get the job? How did he get the job? By osmosis?
Paul, answer this question for me.
Did somebody at UGA hire this guy?
You can't answer
or did
the question,
or did he get the job by winning a lottery?
You can't answer the question. That guy, when he was hired by the University of Georgia, did not have a checkered past. My point is how many people does
he certainly has one now, Matt. He certainly has one now after doing that. We didn't make a big deal about that because it's really not appropriate to just start throwing rocks like you've been doing, because you don't know what you're talking about. You're butthurt over losing to Alabama, and you'll say anything and do anything to try to make yourself feel better. We'll take a short break. More phone calls at 855-242-7285. A lot of guests to come, but probably no more Matt.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Darriel is next.
Well, what about Jonathan Taylor? What about Hill?
That's a good point. He got kicked out of Georgia, and Saban took him.
And then what?
And then Saban. Listen, I think you know how I feel about that. Saban gave the guy a second and third chance, and he bombed out again.
What about Mike DeBose and Mike Price?
Well,
I think one of them never even coached a game, did he?
Well, Mike Price never come. Mike Price was hired and never made it to the first game because he got caught with a bunch of strippers.
And DeBose,
none named Stormy, by the way,
or something like that. I think.
What was that?
Well, Mike DeBose, wasn't he messing around with some intern or something like that on the staff?
No intern, just a secretary.
Just secretary, okay. And what about the players down in Louisiana that were sitting in the car that they found drugs and guns and all that? What about them?
The Cam Robinson situation.
Exactly. I will give Nick Saban some credit though here, okay? He impressed me by lately doing two things. Number one, he said we're going to the White House, okay? I thought that was you know what? That was very impressive. I realized Nick Saban does have some gonads, okay? He said we're going because it's just something that you do, okay? So once in a lifetime opportunity. In my politics, we're going. And I like the fact that he kicked that player off the team that got into it with that coach in the BCS championship.
In the championship. He was gone 3 days later without a comment.
Well, then he should have been gone.
Of course he should have been gone. By the way, he should have been pulled out of the game.
Well, absolutely. I mean, but so that's two moves Nick Saban has made as of lately. That's been impressive. But come on, his past ordeals. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, we all know that all Nick Saban wants to do is win, and he would do anything it takes to win to a certain degree. Okay, there's just some things just so obvious you can't do.
Hey, Darriel, let me ask you a question, though, okay?
Yeah.
You're a pretty good observer of this show. You heard what I said about Jonathan Taylor, and you heard what I said about Cam Robinson.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're not telling me anything I don't already know.
Oh, I'm just pointing out that
I mean, you act like I was defending Saban in either one. I was the only person that criticized Saban in both cases.
Well, I know. You went toe to toe with him in the SEC media day, and he got his little panties in a wad. I know all that. But and by the way, I think Kirby Smart did come from Georgia. I mean, he did play high school football here. He played.
No, I know exactly where he came. I know where he came from, but he did work for Nick Saban for 10 or 11 years, and that was my only point.
But prior to that, he was the assistant coach at Georgia, wasn't he? Under Mark Richt, I think.
I don't go that far back in his resume.
Okay. Now let me say this. I'm concerned here. Okay. This Fields guy that we recruited. I hope we didn't make the mistake of letting the kid that went to Clemson. I think he's going to be. I mean, here's my problem with this.
Yeah. How did he get out of there? Explain that one to me.
Because I guess everybody was all hyped on this Fields guy, and this is what I don't understand. I went and looked at the Georgia high school all-time stats for passing yards, touchdowns, every quarterback stat, okay, that they keep, and they list 40 quarterbacks in each of them, all right? You can find people like, but this kid that's just signed for Clemson, he broke out all the records. Deshaun Watson had a lot of the records, but you can find names like David Green in there. You can find names like Mike Bobo in there. But you can find this kid that went to Clemson. His name is all over it, but you cannot find Fields nowhere in the top 40 in career passing yards, in single game passing yards, in touchdowns for a career, in rushing, in nothing. And I'm like blown away saying, I mean, this kid, you can't find him in none of these records, but he was this prize recruit. Now, I'm going to hope it's going to be like a Cam Newton, because you can't find Cam Newton in none of the stats either, and we know how he turned out. That's how I'm hoping it turns out. But I'm glad we got Jake Fromm, because I got a bad feeling that right there, that's going to be a big bust for Georgia. We'll see how it plays out. I don't see his credentials and what he's done in the past making him that big of a recruit. It doesn't show in the record books, but we shall see. Paul, give Matt a break. How many times has Georgia ever been on major probation in college football?
Can't think of one.
Huh?
Can't think of one recently.
Exactly. They've been around for 100 and something years. Can we say the same thing about Alabama?
No.
Roll Tide. No.
Weston is up next. Weston, thanks. Good afternoon. Welcome to our show.
Hey, Paul. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Love your show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Love your show. Listen, man, I want to talk about this Hugh Freeze thing. First off, Matt's a bum, okay? I just want to say that, and I ain't going to say anything else about it, okay? But Hugh Freeze, man, look, it's 2018, Paul. You want to teach these kids things? Let's teach them about forgiveness. Let's teach them about second chances, all right? I mean, this man, Jimmy Swaggart was picking up prostitutes, and look, he's turned out fine. Am I right? I mean, look, this guy called, as far as I know now I'm not real sure from what I've heard about it, as far as I know, he's just called a call girl. Right?
Weston, hold on a second. We're talking about Hugh Freeze?
Yes.
Well, since I've asked Hugh Freeze to come on this program and detail what got him fired, and he has not been able to say yes, I don't know specifically what Hugh Freeze would say, but I know what people at in close to the situation have said. He didn't just. By the way, what do you do? Why would you just be calling an escort service?
Well, I mean,
just
I don't
to
know,
hear the
Paul,
sound. Just
but
to hear
everybody makes mistakes.
Hey, Wesson, let's cut to the chase, okay? Let's cut the BS out. If all Hugh Freeze did was accidentally call an escort service, don't you think he'd still have a job right now?
Well, I don't know, Paul.
Well, I do know, okay? Let's quit believing that BS that some of his friends may have put out. He did a lot more than just call an escort service. Now, Hugh Freeze said he made a mistake. Well, what mistake exactly did he make? What mistakes exactly did he make that he is so radioactive right now in college football? Would you like to tell me?
That's what
It's obvious. But the commissioner of the SEC has basically insinuated to 5 SEC schools not to hire him. And by the way, he's eligible to coach based on NCAA standards. So
exactly.
So don't you think there's maybe more to it than that? Let's not be naive here, people. Okay?
I'm not being naive.
Yes,
Paul,
you are. You're being naive.
The man is asking for forgiveness. Let's forgive him.
Weston, this is not a church, okay? This is a call-in show, and what he may ask forgiveness and he may get forgiveness. I'm not the person that makes that decision. I'm not the arbiter. But if you think Ole Miss fired somebody that was as successful as Hugh Freeze because he accidentally called an escort service,
I never said he accidentally. You did.
Well, you act like he maybe did it once or twice. Okay.
Hey, it is what it is.
No,
Paul.
it's not.
What
no,
I'm
it's not. It is not. It is what it is. It is what Ole Miss investigated it to be, and what Hugh Freeze admitted it to be. They just didn't fire him on a whim. They had evidence. Okay, he was a public official. He was a public representative of that school. And let's just stop this nonsense that so many in the media are propagating that he made a mistake. He did make a mistake. I agree. I believe in forgiveness. That's between Hugh Freeze and his family, but that's not the issue between Hugh Freeze and the University of Mississippi. That's a totally different issue, okay? Let's take a short break. Back with much more when we come back.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flip.
Everyone in the neighborhood knew about Bobby. Bobby, the basketball boy, they called him. Bobby wanted to go pro someday, so he was always out in the driveway shooting hoops. But one day, his mom came out and told him,
"Hey, your wife wants you to take out the trash?"
His mom was visiting, and Bobby was a grown man. He had kind of missed his window. Plus, no one had ever seen him actually make a basket. But on the other hand, Bobby had heard how Geico could save him money on car insurance, so he switched and saved. So it was all good.
And we're back, and take a look at this headline if you're watching. If you're listening, it reads, "Can Mississippi State really win double-digit games in 2018?" We know Dan Mullen left a team that was within a hair of beating Alabama. But what about the situation under Joe Moorhead? Connor O'Gara joining us from Saturday Down South. Connor, thank you very much for making the time. We were intrigued by your story. Obviously, there are high expectations for State. Good afternoon, and are they justified?
Hey, good afternoon, Paul. I absolutely think that they're justified, given the point that you just mentioned. I mean, Dan Mullen did not leave the cupboard bare, so to speak, in Starkville. I think this is a team that returns so much talent. And besides that, I think the impact of Joe Moorhead on that program is going to be tremendous. I mean, this isn't a guy who's coming in here without some sort of resume. I mean, he is well accomplished given what he did at Penn State the last couple of years and really transforming that offense. I know that people like to give James Franklin a lot of credit for sort of the rebuilding job that he did, and understandably so, but in my opinion, Joe Moorhead was really what took Penn State to that Rose Bowl level, and I think that if you're a Mississippi State fan, you have to be ecstatic that you're able to bring in a guy like him who's going to be able to not necessarily have to overhaul the offense, and he's going to be able to take that roster this year and turn it into something that can really contend, I think, in the immediate future.
Listen, we know, based on watching Penn State, that he ran a pretty high-octane passing offense, had a good quarterback. He also had the best running back in the country. How does that translate to what he has now with Nick Fitzgerald?
Well, I think a lot of people like to compare Trace McSorley to Nick Fitzgerald because not necessarily that they were these highly touted guys. I mean, both kind of came in without really much acclaim, but the job that he did with Trace McSorley was really impressive, and I thought the thing that really took that offense to the next level was his ability to establish the deep ball. Now, Nick Fitzgerald, as we know, that's not his forte, and that's going to take some work for Joe Moorhead to be able to find those guys in the passing game who are going to be able to stretch the field. That's why that Penn State offense was so good, and you didn't have all these guys in the box loading up on stopping Saquon Barkley. Now, there's no guarantee that that's going to be established in the same exact way at Mississippi State, but that's kind of why I like the comp, because you need a guy who can obviously make plays on with his legs when things break down. But I mean, I'm looking at what Nick Fitzgerald is going to be able to do in that offense, and compared to what he was able to do under Dan Mullen, I don't think it's going to be a whole lot different. I think, if anything, he's going to be open up to do even more things, and he's going to have even more responsibilities to do things at the line of scrimmage and to make some plays downfield that maybe have held Mississippi State back from beating some of those better teams.
Connor, I've only interviewed him a couple of times, but he seems to be a really low-key, likable person. I recently visited with someone who had been on the practice field with him. He's intense, but he's lighthearted. How is all that going to mix in the grinded-out, dog-eat-dog SEC?
I think he has the perfect personality for the SEC, to be honest. He's got a little bit of this swagger about him. He's always had that. Even at Penn State, he had guys who would call out his offense and say that those balls downfield are only 50-50 plays, and say that Trace McSorley got lucky. But he would stand up and defend his quarterback, and I think he even said that those takes were like a lunacy at best or something like that. But he's got this quiet confidence about him, and you saw that the first day he shows up on the job. He's asking guys to learn their ring sizes. I mean, that's just who he is. He comes in with this swagger that I think is going to fit in really well with the SEC, and I think it's going to fit in well with the personality that he wants to instill there. I mean, he's got a lot of confidence in what he does, as he should. His track record right now is really impressive. I mean, a guy who was coaching at a place like Fordham as recently as a couple years ago, who has risen through the ranks this quickly to build one of the best offenses in the country, and is now in position to have one of the best rosters in the country, in my opinion. And I just think that his personality, while he might be considered an outsider, I think he's going to fit right in with this conference.
Talking to Connor O'Gara from Saturday Down South, let's talk a little bit about the upcoming season. You're very high, obviously. Good reason to be high when you think about what he is inheriting. The schedule, let's talk about that. We'll throw it up there in a minute and share with our fans what State faces as they try to break into contention. They play Stephen F. Austin at K-State, Louisiana, and then at Kentucky, Florida, and Auburn. The first half of the season, manageable. The second half at LSU, A&M, Louisiana Tech, at Bama, Arkansas, and Ole Miss. What do you see in that schedule?
Well, I'm only seeing one game that scares me, and that's the game in Tuscaloosa. I mean, other than that, really the rest of the schedule, I think, shapes up pretty well. Yeah, the game going to Death Valley is going to be really tough. It's not easy to play at LSU, although you could ask Troy, and they would probably tell you something different about that. But, I mean, let's not forget 37-7 last year. 37-7 doesn't just go away in a year's time that quickly. In my opinion, that was a game that Mississippi State dominated from start to finish, so I'm not really worried about LSU. I'm not worried about an Auburn team that, frankly, hasn't been that good on the road against Power 5 competition the last 4 years, so that really doesn't scare me as much. The Kansas State game could be tricky. They, of course, have a lot of experience coming back. But other than that, I mean, I think that the path for 10 wins is pretty manageable. I know that you look at that division and you think you've got a gauntlet, and it's really difficult year in, year out to have a winning record in that division. But, I mean, based on what we saw from this team last year, I mean, you talked about it before. How close was this team to even being a 10-win team last year? I mean, if Nick Fitzgerald is active for the entire Egg Bowl, and if you want to go back to that Alabama game, I mean, they were right there knocking on the door. So I don't think to say, it might sound a little bit crazy to say 10 wins is totally easily for Mississippi State when we know their history or lack thereof in having double-digit win seasons. But I'm looking at this team right now, and I'm thinking that the path is pretty clear. just because of that roster, because of that schedule, and because of what Joe Moorhead is going to be able to do from the jump.
So I think I heard you pretty clear, but I want to make sure because we live in an absolute society. You're saying 10 wins, right?
I'll say 10 wins. I'll go on the record. Sure, why not? Let's throw that up there.
10-win season for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. That would put them in contention for the SEC. Maybe not get to Atlanta, but pretty close. Connor, very optimistic. We really appreciate that. We like people that have opinions, whether they're right or wrong. They go over well here. Connor, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Wow. Now, I like that guy. Now, unlike some people who will go, they could win 7, 8, 9. Yeah, we all know that. But we want opinions here. We don't care if you're right or wrong. Nobody's going to check Connor right or wrong. But he's predicting a 10-win season for Mississippi State. Regular season. We're not talking about bowl games here. 10-2 for the Bulldogs. You guys agree? We'll take a short break. 855-242-7285.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back to the program. Let's continue more phone calls right here. And Robert in Texas, you're on the air. Go right ahead.
Hello, Paul.
Hi there.
Just wanted to touch base on a few things. First of all, whenever Coach Saban went to the White House and he came out with President Trump and they were playing Hail to the Chief, I kind of felt Nick deserved that song just as well.
Yeah, somebody told me that was there. It was really interesting. You heard Hail to the Chief, and there was the most powerful man in the world, and then President Trump.
Yeah, and seeing how Coach Saban's been there 4 times, 4 years as a president. But
babe, I don't mean to make this a political joke, but I think Saban's been there more than the president has lately.
That is true. But also, I noticed about the process, even there, that even though Tua and the Smith young man...
Oh, yeah, they were in the hinterlands.
Right, they were being freshmen. They might have been the heroes of the national championship, but the process said, you're still freshmen.
Yeah, even Donald Trump was like saying, Tua, what are you doing way up there? You're the man.
Yeah, which showed that the guys that got them there, the seniors and the other 4- and 5-star people, have done their duty. And
I think someone made a point earlier, and I know you'll agree, Robert. And the one thing I try to avoid at all costs is politics. And I understand if an NBA team like the Warriors or a football team, it's a little different situation. But I am glad that Saban said, you know what, we won the national championship. We're going to the White House. This is right. No team vote here. This is what I want to do. Right. This game was for the all 50 states and all that. It wasn't a political position. No, and I know the University of North Carolina decided not to go last year, and that's fine. As I've said in the past, I mean they have studies to keep up with, special studies, and all the great curriculum that we found out that the University of North Carolina really doesn't have. But in the end, those young men have an experience of a lifetime going to the White House, and that supersedes your political views. Oh, yes, and also I wanted to bring up, this little argument with LeBron about the barbershop and all that. Hey, by the way, that argument's over since someone sued LeBron yesterday. Is, Nick has done, Coach Saban, I hate to quit calling him Nick. You can call him whatever you want. No, but Coach Saban showed respect. Coach Saban has brought on some things. Like last year, I got so sick of hearing about the turnover chain or whatever from Miami. Did not Alabama have the turnover belt for about 2 or 3 years before that? Yeah, but that turnover chain, is like it or not, it caught on, and it's one reason I think Miami is close to being back. They're not all the way. Hey, Robert, thank you for the call. I do appreciate it. Let's continue with more phone calls. And Charles in East Tennessee, you're on the air. Go right ahead, Charles.
Yes, Paul. I was calling about Phil being the athletic director. I've been behind him. I thought it was stupid when we let him go as a coach back in the day.
Well, it was even stupider not to hire him as athletic director the first time around, but thank goodness he got the job.
Yes, sir, and I'm very proud that he did, and I wish him all the luck. I'm a first-time caller, and it's been a privilege talking to you.
Well, thank you, Charles. I appreciate the call from Morristown. Rob in Pensacola, you're on the air. Go right ahead.
Hey, what's going on, Paul? How you doing today?
We are doing great. Thank you.
That's awesome. Hey, I just wanted to make a comment about some stuff Darriel was saying. I'm a huge Georgia fan myself, getting ready for the spring game this weekend. And he was talking about Justin Fields potentially, being a bust. Justin Fields and Curious Jackson were two huge reasons we got the class that we got this year. If you follow recruiting, they pulled in so many recruits, it's not even funny. So even if for some weird reason he turns out to be a bust, his influence on getting us the rest of the people that we got is incredible.
Well, that's important, and sometimes what the public doesn't see is interesting, and I don't know whether he's better than Lawrence at Clemson, and we will eventually find out. It is fascinating the number of quarterbacks that this state has produced in recent years, going back to Deshaun Watson.
No, you're absolutely correct. I do know that Trevor Lawrence did throw 3 interceptions in the Under Armour game. Back to back. So that kind of made me feel a lot better about getting Justin Fields myself.
Thank you very much. Good to hear from you, Rob.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've got a lot more to do today. Certainly first hour consisted of a lot of conversation in relation to Mississippi State and Joe Moorhead. We had a guest on from Saturday Down South predicting 10 wins, and again, I jokingly said everyone's got 8 or 9 or 10 wins right now. That's what spring is about. It's about being optimistic, and when you go to campuses, and we send people all the time, they tend to come back with very upbeat. If they come back and say, I don't think this team's going to be worth a flip, got serious problems. We are going to take a break. More guests to come, more of your phone calls after this.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Put a little cherry on the top.
Thank you for listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast. The Paul Finebaum Show airs weekdays on the SEC Network, beginning at 3 Eastern.
It was BYOG, bring your own guts.
This is the best
Do you hear me?
of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back. Second hour is live and underway, and we've had a good one so far. A lot of talk about Joe Moorhead. Yes, the new coach at Mississippi State in hour number one. We'll continue with your phone calls at 855-242-7285. Let's check in Brandon up next. Brandon, thanks for the time, and good afternoon.
Hey, what's going on, Paul? How you doing today?
We are doing great.
I was just enjoying the Dumb and Dumber special with Darriel and Matt, but anyway. I guess got a quick thing to add with what Darriel was saying, just a couple points to make. There's a saying about throwing stones from glass houses?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind him of that, and then also let him know it wasn't too far ago. It might not have been football, but they've got plenty of little stuff brewing down there in Georgia, and Jonathan Taylor's accuser recanted, but that's irrelevant. The topic I wanted to talk about today was Auburn, Paul, and sure. I'm a diehard Bama fan. I've told you that a million times, but I like hearing what you got to say. I have some issues with Auburn, which I also have the same issues with Georgia, losing Chubb and Michelle and that 9,000 yards in career offense, and now you got Auburn with a banged-up Stidham, and then Stove and Hastings and that decimated offensive line, and let's just be honest, Auburn doesn't really get back-to-back 10-win seasons very often. I was looking at a lot of the conference games that Auburn plays, and, Paul, I just want to know, is it too far-fetched to say maybe there could be a 3 or 4 loss team Auburn here? I want to talk to you.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly 3, and the reason why I think you can go with 3 without even sneezing is the fact that Auburn on the schedule as of now, things change, of course, has 3 top 10 teams. They open against Washington, which Chris Peterson's done a phenomenal job. He was a playoff team 2 years ago, and the ends with Georgia and Alabama, which will be probably one in 4 if I had to guess the preseason rankings.
All right. I was just curious, them coming off that big $49 million contract. My question to you also to close this phone call, say that there is 3 and say that we even somehow push for a 4th. How do you think it's brewing down there on the Plains? Have a good day, Paul.
Well, you know what, Brandon, there may be some unhappy Auburn fans, but with a 7-year, $49 million contract, I don't think Gus Malzahn's going to give a rip. He's about as safe a coach as anyone right now to the east of Jimbo Fisher and to the south of Nick Saban because what does he care? He's been through it before. He was within a loss or 2 of losing his job last year, so I don't think he's overly concerned, and he shouldn't be. Having lived in Alabama, knowing how things are there, if he has an 8-4 season and then follows it up with another one, yeah, you'll hear a lot of heat. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Bobby in Birmingham, you're on the air. Go right ahead, Bobby.
How you doing today, buddy?
Bobby, we are doing great. Thank you for asking.
I got a question for you. As God bless you today, if not, send $10.95 for the prayer call. One phone call, you kicked into the curb. I thought that was your boy, Paul.
Hugh Freeze?
Yeah, one phone call.
Well, you know what? I supported Hugh Freeze for a long time because I believed that he was in the right. But you know what, Bobby? Sometimes you take a look at someone a second time and you see it through a different prism.
Yeah.
And I've seen a couple of things. I'm not saying he's I don't know what he is, frankly, because I don't think he's ever been honest about what brought him down. I don't think he's been honest about what brought him down in terms of the NCAA, and I don't think he's been honest about what brought him down among his personal failures. It's very easy and convenient, Bobby, to say I made mistakes. We hear it all the time from politicians. They always go into rehab when they get caught. But what do they do while they're in power?
Well, I was sitting here listening to you earlier. I want to be the reporter.
Okay.
I want to interview you.
You may ask me anything you want.
Mr. Finebaum, do you think they should give Hugh Freeze another chance? Answer, Mr. Finebaum. Hell no. Hey, Paul, you got 10,000 comedians out of work, and one call your show every day between 2 and 2:30. Is this the number you call to audition for a comedian job?
Yeah, they're doing that new show, American Idol for Comedians, and this guy, Matt, just can't seem to get the memo that he's not going to win.
Yeah, well, I was wondering if this is the number you call for a comedian job. And then old boy said Mississippi State going to win 10 games this year. Do they still make typewriters, Paul?
I haven't seen one in about 20 years.
Well, that's the only way they win 10. They have to type it on a typewriter. Look at here. I ain't gonna hold you. I'm gonna say this. I got to let you go. Everybody talking about what type coaches we hired at Alabama, what the players did at Alabama. If the truth was known, everybody that had something to say about that, I bet you they got 10 Make America Great caps in the closet. Damn hypocrites.
Guess he won't be chairing the committee to reelect. Let's check out Ed in Georgia. How are you, Ed?
Doing fine. How are you?
Oh, we are doing great. Thank you for calling.
Want to talk to you about the Yugo Dome.
Sure.
Which is the Mercedes-Benz Dome without any doors. You can't get in the dome. You can't get out of it. Understand they were going to do something about egress and egress. Can you give me an update on that?
I haven't really heard. I'll see if I can find that out, though. Appreciate the call. Trey is up next. somebody else has heard, let us know. Trey is up next in Tuscaloosa. How are you, Trey?
I'm great, Mr. Finebaum. I have a couple questions for you. Don't these Georgia fans kind of remind you of the Ohio State fans back in 2014? Oh, we beat Nick Saban. Oh, we come close to Nick Saban. Oh, we're out-recruiting Nick Saban. But if I recall, the Big Ten ain't scored in the college football playoff since 2014. And
well, they were. Ohio State played Clemson a year and a half ago.
They didn't score though.
Well, yeah, okay, you're right. But by the way, the difference, you are right about that. But I think Georgia fans have confused the national championship on signing day with the national championship on the end of the college football playoff day.
Yeah, well, also Saban taking Jonathan Taylor. Wasn't he a defensive player?
Yes.
Do you think Nick Saban had a conversation with Kirby Smart about Jonathan Taylor before he brought him over there? Wouldn't you think that happened?
Probably right. By the way, I thought Nick Saban was dead wrong on Jonathan Taylor. So, and he was, and that was proven to be correct.
Right. Well, and another thing, I can tell you what's wrong with Matt and Darriel. They dreaming of about 2nd and 26 still, so that's what's wrong with them too. They'll get over it and roll tide, Paul. Too blessed to be stressed. Have a great day.
I like that one. Thank you for the call. We really do appreciate it. Let's continue. Randy is up next. What do you say, Randy?
Hey, how you doing, Paul?
We are doing great. Thank you.
I don't know. Maybe you can tell me this. Are you a little bit tired of hearing Georgia fans compare themselves to the national championship? I mean, as far as I'm not a Vol. I'm not Alabama. I'm a Gator. But this nonsense of them comparing themselves to Alabama right now is ridiculous. Matter of fact, as far as I'm concerned, they're going to be lucky to compare themselves to the Gators this year.
Well, I mean, let's not forget, and it's easy to do so, that Georgia is the SEC champion. But have you ever seen a year where two things have so little meaning? The winner of the Iron Bowl and the winner of the SEC championship.
That's true. That's exactly right. And I remember one year Georgia came in here at the Florida-Georgia game, and everybody said they were going to be the national champions, and what did Florida do? They shut them down. And Florida's actually looking pretty good this year. I just watched their orange and blue game. I don't know if you got a chance to catch that or not.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of it, yes.
Yeah, and they look pretty good, didn't they? I mean,
they do.
They do. I think we got 4 good quarterbacks, and I think we're going to do all right this year. So, before Georgia starts mouthing off about how great and wonderful they are, they need to think about the Gators first. Take it easy, Paul. Nice talking to you, buddy.
Yeah, the only thing I wonder about, though, Randy, and I just throw this out to anyone, as big a game as that is, how many of you Georgia fans are thinking about Florida right now? Any? 855-242-7285. I think that rivalry has changed in recent years. We'll take a break. More of your phone calls when we come back.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
And we welcome all of you back. Glad you're here. Let's get some more phone calls here at 855-242-7285. Shaq is in Georgia. You're on the air. Go right ahead.
Hey, Paul.
Hi there.
Thanks for taking my call. I love your show.
Thank you very much.
I coached football for a lot of years, the last 4 in college, and basically this is for the Florida nation. I've watched SEC football for close to 50 years, and Saturday was the first time ever that I ever saw a Florida football player with his shirt tail hanging out down around his thigh pads. Now, I'm going to tell you what. If you think you're going to beat the most disciplined program in America, Alabama, with shirt tails hanging out and belt buckles undone, you better get a grip. If you're scared,
do me a favor. I know this is basic to you, Shaq, but to the less informed, I really want you to use your 50-year-plus experience and explain why that is so important.
Well, if you're scared to tell your players how to dress, what else are you scared to tell them?
Good point.
unsportsmanlike conduct, all other stuff. It just tells me all I need to know about the head coach. Paul, I enjoyed talking to you, and I hope I talk to you later.
I hope so. Thank you for the information. Really interesting to hear. Mike is in Mississippi. Mike, welcome to our program. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
Okay, thank you very much.
Hey, I'm seeing all these Mississippi State fans come on saying how they're going to have a 10-win season and all that, but I want to talk to you about the Egg Bowl champion Ole Miss Rebels, and more specifically the offense that we're bringing in this year, led by Jordan Ta'amu and A.J. Brown.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I really think JT isn't getting a lot of love, and, he came in, took over for Shea after he got injured last year, and it led us to a great second half of the year, and everyone's predicting him at the bottom of the SEC as far as quarterback rankings go, and I just want to know what you think about that.
Well, I think he's really good, but I think it's more the issue around him. And, yeah, they're really good players on that team, but are there enough good players?
I mean, we got arguably the best receiving core in the country.
Okay, but Mike, but you're talking about a program that has been hurt for a couple of years in recruiting, and skill-wise, I agree with you, but I just don't know. And I'm leaning on you for information. Is there enough depth across the board?
Well, as far as what position? What position are you talking about?
Well, you name it. I mean, you've given me the ones that you've given me quarterback and wide receiver. What about
you know what we got as far as our skill positions go. I mean, and as far as our offensive line, we still got Sean Rawlings. We still got Jordan.
And what does the defense look like?
The defense is still looking great. We brought in a new linebacker coach. We got Summerall in there coaching up the linebackers. We got Dietrich Bing-Dukes and Willie Hibbler. They might be All-Americans this year. You don't know.
Well, I mean, I would agree with you that there are a lot of really good players, but I saw that team last year a couple of times where the defense was just gashed.
Well, don't worry. I mean, what game are you referring to?
Well, I guess I probably shouldn't pick on the Alabama game, but I still saw Vanderbilt put 35 up. I saw other games that were pretty questionable. So, I mean, listen, I'm not telling you that Ole Miss won't be good, but I saw some problems last year that would make me pause before I started declaring that this is going to be an 8, 9, 10 win team.
So what do you predict then? Like
I really don't know. I mean, let's talk about it. Texas Tech, Southern. Let's look at the first half of the season. Right now, I see 1-2 losses on the first 6 games. I see 3. I see 4. I think Ole Miss could win 7 games, maybe 8.
Who in the first 6 games? Who do you have us losing to? Alabama and who else?
And LSU.
Now, you think we can't beat LSU?
You asked me my opinion. I just gave it.
No. I'm not saying.
No, we're not talking about a probability. Do I think LSU will win that game? Right now, I think LSU will win that game. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well,
you're gonna beat Auburn at home. You're gonna beat South Carolina at home. You're gonna win at A&M. You're gonna win at Vanderbilt, and you're gonna win against Mississippi State.
My opinion is that we would probably lose to Auburn at home, but I think we can beat LSU on the road.
Why?
I don't think LSU is going to be that good this year. I think LSU's way overhyped.
Okay, and what I'm just trying to understand with a team last year that at times was downright embarrassing to watch, did come on strong at the end against Mississippi State in a game that you've heard more about that game than I have. I'm just really curious. It took a come-from-behind win over Kentucky. A&M beat you, which was a very average team. You know that.
Yep.
I'll scratch the Alabama game, okay? That's maybe not fair because that was the worst performance by an Ole Miss team I think I have ever seen. You would agree with me, wouldn't you? Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
So tell me the bright spot. I mean, don't give me skill position because college football involves a lot more than the front 22.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, I just feel like, this is Matt Luke's second year coming in as head coach, and he's finally got that interim tag off of him, so he's got a little bit more freedom.
By the way, I'm just thinking about this. You lost to, let me think about this for a second. You lost to two schools that that fired their coach, and Vanderbilt and A&M and Arkansas. I mean, you lost to Arkansas last year in late October. I mean, I'm just trying to take some snapshots of the season, okay?
Yep.
And I'm trying to understand. I mean, you can't throw out the Mississippi State game, but I'm really just trying to understand beyond that game where and the fact that you have a really good quarterback and recruiting pretty well, why you think Ole Miss, which has missed a couple of recruiting classes, which will very unlikely be playing for a bowl game, why you think Ole Miss is going to be a what? Give me your upside. I mean, I think they're an average team. That's all.
Well, I think that with Coach Luke's second year coming in the SEC, he's got the interim tag off of him.
Okay, so sell me on Matt Luke, okay?
I mean, Matt Luke is an Ole Miss Rebel. He's a player's coach.
Okay, so let's let's do this intellectually. And by the way, I like Matt Luke, and I was on a show the other day that I thought I praised him. So I'm not coming across as a hater. I'm just trying to come across intellectually, or maybe just intelligently. Matt Luke is going to be a winning coach in the SEC, an upper echelon coach, because he went to Ole Miss. Give me another reason.
Oh my! Come on, Paul.
No, you're the one that opened the door here. I want to know what else there is about Matt Luke that gives you so much optimism.
Well, he coached here for our.
No, that's kind of the same answer. You've really given me the same answer twice. He's coached there for a long time. Give me another answer.
He's got our players believing in him again.
Stop right there, Mike.
You got to understand. You got to understand that last year was a rough year with the NCAA.
Let's look at this. Let's look at this another. Mike, if we're gonna have a conversation, two people have to talk. That's the rule in life. May not on this show. I'm going to give you a couple of. Let's stay in the SEC East let's stay in the West for a second. I just need a one-word answer. I don't need a speech. Okay, you ready?
Go ahead.
Is Matt Luke a better coach than Nick Saban?
No.
Is Matt Luke a better coach than Gus Malzahn?
No.
Is Matt Luke a better coach than Jimbo Fisher?
That's close, but no. Paul?
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flip.
Next, you're holding up the line, ma'am.
What did you say?
You're next in line for the water slide, ma'am. Feet forward and enjoy the ride.
Okay, dearie. This does look fun. Whee-oh! You melted me. I've melted.
The Wicked Witch of the West on a water slide? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
See what you've done. Oh!
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Let's welcome everyone back to our program, and Dave Bartoo joining us. Quite a bit to chew on. He is a football analytics expert. Dave, thank you very much for the time. Welcome to the program. How are you?
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Anytime. Now, I'm doing good out here. Just wish it would stop raining in Oregon and get sunny here in spring.
Before we get too deep, I want to learn a little bit more and share with the audience. I think I know what you do, but explain how you come up with the analytics that you do.
There's two sides of it. The in-depth stuff that I do for athletic departments, for head coaches, for offensive, defensive coordinators. It's all about pregame analytics and trying to get an edge to win football games. Okay, on the public side, like what we're talking about, I try to simplify things. And the three basic things that I work off of that I created about 15 years ago is looking at the talent of a team, the coaching of a team, and the home road advantage for teams. And I just use those three things to basically tell stories. Okay, so when we're talking, when you're listening, everything that I'm talking about is a story that I get from reading the numbers. Not just it's not a gut feeling or an expertise or anything like that. So my forte is telling the stories with numbers in a simple fashion with coaching, talent, and where football games are played, Paul.
And so when you look at, everyone this time of the year has opinions. Vegas puts out over and unders. Fans all think their team is going to be great. But you have to look beyond that. Is there a specific number? Let's say the debate between Alabama and Georgia. Where are you focusing your attention on?
Okay, well, when you look at these two teams, the first thing that you got to break down, in my opinion, is the schedule of these two teams. Because from a talent perspective, on paper, after attrition, they're not that dissimilar. In fact, for the last 10 years, they haven't been dissimilar in their overall talent. Certainly Alabama better, but not big enough where, if Georgia has them at home, they should be losing most of those football games. So when you look at Georgia and Alabama right now, I think you have to start with that schedule and what they have for the 2018 season. For Georgia, schedule is extremely favorable, and I'd be surprised when you look at the Vegas numbers that should be coming out for these totals. They should be, the over-under on those should be double-digit win totals. Now, you got the same thing for Alabama, but when I'm looking at Alabama, you got to be looking at the schedule. But I think the biggest question for Alabama this year is the coaching turnover. Now, normally with what I would say a normal program, when you have this kind of coaching turnover, bad things tend to happen, or at least teams fall below expectations. But ever since Nick lost 8 starters on offense and turned around and won the national championship with 3 returning starters on offense, I kind of throw the book out on Alabama. The guy psychologically is far beyond everybody else. So when you look at these two teams, I think a fan needs to start with what the schedule is and what your expectation is off the schedule, not necessarily how good they are against each other, but how good are they against the schedule. Because in the end, top 25, it's all about wins and losses, and I think you got to look at that talent versus the schedule first and foremost.
And Dave, I want to stay with Alabama for a second. And if you look at Alabama, they had a lot of turnover both on the field and off. But if you go back a year or two, back to Kirby Smart leaving that staff and Lane Kiffin, it is just a continuum. At some point, and I realize we're talking Nick Saban, does that show up?
I know, it's kind of like a blind squirrel finds a nut, right? Eventually you're going to say, oh, this is going to hurt. It didn't hurt. Oh, this is going to hurt. No, it didn't hurt. Oh, he hired Lane Kiffin. No, that didn't hurt. They won a national title. Oh, they lost, Smart. No, they brought in another elite defensive coordinator in Pruitt. Now, if you're going to point something out, is this line of defensive coordinators, because Smart and Pruitt, you look at their numbers over their career, their scoring efficiency. You're looking at 2 elite defensive coordinators. Okay, now you have a defensive coordinator that really doesn't have any track record at all. So you got a big question mark next to him. You got an offensive coordinator in Loxley, huge question mark next to him. You look at his offensive coordinator, his play calling over his career, and it's in the bottom 25% of active offensive coordinators right now. So I guess if there was going to be a year where it finally bites him in the butt, you could say it would be this year, but to say I expect that would be really denying how many times Nick has overcome. But
Dave, here's where I have to pause, and I realize you're the numbers guy, but is Nick Saban the exception to every rule?
Something, if you want to be right, it's easy to say he's an exception to every rule. Just pick him to win football games.
Yeah, exactly.
But realistically, when I'm looking at the breakdown of the offensive and defensive coordinators, this is probably the weakest year he's had. Okay, because you just mentioned all of this turnover. You mentioned Kiffin. Okay, now I almost think he did that to us, the public, on purpose, just to prove he could win with anybody. Okay? But still, Lane Kiffin had a track record. He had decent numbers as an offensive coordinator previously. Okay? Loxley has nothing like that. It's awful compared to Kiffin. Okay? You look at the defensive coordinator. Yeah, they lost Smart, but they basically brought the same bloody guy in Pruitt, and the numbers were almost identical. But now you have a defensive coordinator in Tosh that has no numbers at all. So even though there has been turnover on the player side, I think they've gotten used to that because it's plug and play. They have so much talent there. I believe when you look at their pairing of coaches, certainly Nick has just been stable throughout the whole time, but you look at the pairing of offensive and defensive coordinators, I believe this is the weakest pairing he's had since he's been at Tuscaloosa.
Interesting. And I want to follow up on that, not to obsess over Nick Saban, but you rarely hear anyone say what you have just got through saying it. So if you're looking for a pause, you also then look at the schedule. It is not that challenging, though, is it?
Again, it goes back to how challenging, has any of the schedules been when you look at it. The teams have been so good. Now, I think the break for Alabama scheduling is you've had so much turnover in the West. I mean, just about everybody. I mean, Arkansas, complete turnover. You have Mississippi State, complete turnover.
Ole Miss changed coach,
yeah, and all their NCAA issues.
LSU,
LSU. You fire which I feel was a really good offensive coordinator, and you bring a guy in that I have to go back and get Stone XL tablets to try to figure out what this guy did. And then A&M brings in a whole new group. So, it's maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's the football gods trying to annoy people that don't like Saban in Alabama, but when you look at, I'm saying this is the weakest offensive and defensive coordinator pairing he has had on paper so far. It's also probably the most discombobulated and unstable the SEC West has been since he's got there.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I want to zero in on LSU for a second because you were indirectly, I think, talking about Steve Ensminger, who, by the way, will not know what you said because he said he doesn't read newspapers, nor does he read the internet.
Well,
but he is the offensive coordinator under Ed Orgeron. So for LSU fans who are getting nervous, they're coming off a 9-4 season. It wasn't bad, other than the Troy game and the Notre Dame collapse at the end. But Vegas is not crazy about this program. What about you?
Well, you shouldn't be. You still have Ed Orgeron in charge of it. This is a guy who at Ole Miss, in his tenure at Ole Miss, was arguably the worst coach in college football. And there was no inconsistency either. Every year it was bad. In fact, his best job as a head coach, unequivocally, it's not even close, was last year. Now, I think a lot of that was on the back of his elite defensive coordinator in Aranda and the guy, Canada, that they just fired and gave him 12 games to get things going at LSU. So, I don't mind looking down at LSU either, even though their talent is still elite. They still recruit at a very high level. Even though I thought, wasn't Ed supposed to be some dynamic recruiter too, Paul?
He was supposed to be a great recruiter.
Yeah, and LSU pulled their third non-top 10 class in the last 15 years. Yeah, go figure. So you got a recruiter that isn't recruiting as well, and his history as a head coach is not very good. You have an offensive coordinator that we have no idea what he's going to do. I think if LSU is going to win football games, it's going to be entirely on the defense. And long term, I just don't think it's going to last as you see this staff today.
Does it, finally, Dave, on that, and this is fabulous stuff, does it look like after trying to be the new Ed Orgeron and learning from all the mistakes that he made, that by bringing in Ensminger, he was already on the staff, of course, by elevating him, he's simply gone right back to yesteryear?
Well, I think a lot of coaches, a lot of them that I've talked to, they're kind of in two buckets. They stick with what got them there, which is usually the small box of doing the same thing every time, regardless if it's successful or not, because they judge their success based on their contract. Or you have the head coach that is constantly looking for something new. They keep doing things, but they're looking for different ways of improving. I think Ed, even though I haven't met him, would fall in that bucket of what got me here is inside this little square, and I'm going to stick to it. And yes, I think what he did, he didn't like what Canada was doing. He wasn't comfortable with it. It wasn't in that little Ed box. And so he brought a guy in that gets him in his comfort zone, even though it may be a detriment to winning football games.
Fabulous stuff, Dave Bartoo. Thank you so much. We really appreciate this. Great insight.
Anytime, buddy. Thank you.
Man, I mean, you talk about a guy that no BS, cuts right to the cord, suggesting that Orgeron may have some bleak days ahead, and also putting a blinking red light out for Nick Saban in relation to the weakest pair of coordinators that he has had at Alabama. Chew on that one for a moment. We'll take a break. More of your phone calls when we come back.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back. Dave Bartoo, really great conversation with him. More of your calls at 855-242-7285. Rich in the ATL, you are on the air. How are you, Rich?
I'm good, Jack. How you doing, bud?
Excellent. Thank you.
Hey, Jack, can I ask you a question?
You may.
How many years have we heard thousands of UGA callers call this show and say guys like Darriel and Matt do not represent their fan base.
Quite a few.
Right. And where are they? Because I think this is laughable, this moral high ground that they're taking. And then they talked about the history of UGA, like it's Lily White. Do they not remember Jan Kemp?
Probably not. That was Jan Kemp was the professor at UGA who exposed the university in the early 80s. Would that be fair?
That's correct.
Yeah.
During the Herschel years, and they fired her, and she sued them, and I think she won like $1 million. They were fixing grades for the football players.
Exactly.
So, right. And then, let's fast forward to Mr. Marles, Kirby Smart. Did he or did he not take a picture of the recruiting board leaving Alabama?
That is certainly the allegation coming from inside Tuscaloosa.
That's correct. Okay, how about this one? Do you remember Beamer's son that he hired, Shane Beamer?
Shane Beamer, sure.
Okay, do you remember that there was something that had to do with that Wake Forest game when he was at Virginia Tech and he was getting information, I don't know if it was from a coach or a broadcaster or whatever. Do you realize that he got fined for that?
I didn't realize that.
Right, he was implicated and
he worked at Alabama at one time too, I think, didn't he?
Yeah. Yes, but I think he was a intern maybe at Alabama. I'm not positive. But he was fined about $25,000. So did Mr. Morality, Kirby Smart, or Greg McGarity, did they fire him for that?
I don't know. I really didn't keep up with it.
The answer is no. So I'm just laying out a couple of facts, to go against this narrative about how Lily White UGA is. And I don't even want to get into the speculation with Kirby Smart as it regards to, do you think there was any possible tampering with Mel Tucker when he was leaving Tuscaloosa? How about Maurice Smith's mother? You think he may have said something to her? I mean, and again, that's speculation, but what's your guess?
Man, I'm all out of guesses, Rich.
I know what my guess is. All I'm trying to say is it's ridiculous for these guys to have this high moral ground about Kirby Smart UGA versus Alabama. Is that fair enough?
That sounds good, Rich.
All right. Hey, Jack, real quick, I'm going to ask you 2 legal questions because I know you're really an attorney masquerading as a broadcaster. If Shea Patterson isn't granted that waiver, do you think that he could sue the NCAA for the right to play next year?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then the second one may be a little trickier. Hugh Freeze, now that this is all out, but could he challenge that bylaw? I heard 4 jobs.
I heard that he had considered challenging it. Yes. I don't know. I doubt he will because I think it would be suicide. But there was a lot of speculation that he was considering a lawsuit.
Right, because I'm not an attorney,
but Rich, here's the problem for Hugh Freeze. And you know where I'm going. In a lawsuit, discovery is certainly the first step before you get to court. And I sincerely doubt that Hugh Freeze wants to take a deposition on that case.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But what you're doing fundamentally is stopping a person from gainful employment.
But here's where I think it would get tricky. I think the SEC would argue that they did not stop him. They just gave an opinion, and it was ultimately up to Alabama and the 4 other schools to bring him on or not. Now, again, the communication might be fascinating, not to go into Michael Cohn's case, but wouldn't you like to read the communication between the SEC and the University of Alabama?
Probably not if I'm Hugh Freeze. I got you. You're right. But I was just wondering.
Yeah, but Rich, I think for Hugh Freeze to challenge that, he would open himself up. And quite frankly, I think he'll be back next year. I joked about this earlier with Bob Lee. I think it's double secret probation right out of Animal House. And I think for him to fight it, he would end up losing. Now, you can argue all day long whether it was a right call or not. I frankly think the commissioner made the right call. Roger Goodell certainly has a moral authority on the NFL, just like Adam Silver on the NBA. And quite frankly, I'd rather have authority being concerned than looking the other way at the price of victory. Thanks for the call. We are up against a break.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Put a little cherry on the top.
It was BYOG, bring your own guts.
This is the best
Do you hear me?
of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back. Second half of the show is live and underway, and this has been a good show so far. We have more guests to come. We'll go to Knoxville in a few minutes. We've already been all over the place talking about LSU, Alabama, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. Your phone call is 855-242-7285. Let's get back to the calls, and David is in Tennessee. David, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Paul. How are you today?
I am well. Thank you.
Let me just say, first of all, for the record, I seriously doubt that regardless of who the offensive and defensive coordinator is at Alabama, that's going to hinder that program much this season.
I think you're dead on there.
And I'm a big Tennessee fan, so you can probably guess about what I think about Alabama. But Nick Saban is definitely the best coaching in the history of college football, in my opinion.
I don't think there's really a debate about that. I mean, everybody wants to quibble, but
well, there shouldn't be.
There's no reason to. I mean, there's only one other man.
The man hasn't proved it by now. I mean, I don't know what it would take.
Yeah, I mean, there was some debate maybe 2 years ago, but.
Maybe 2 years ago,
but beating Georgia the way he beat Georgia, that it's over. Okay.
Yes, he's the best. He was stacked up against the Bear. He's the best. But anyway, that's not why I called. Earlier in the program, I think it was the first hour. Matt from Gainesville, and I've been listening, watching this show for a long time. And I've heard lots of people on this show accuse you of you're a big Alabama fan, and I've never understood what these people's issues are. You've never come across me as just a rah Alabama fan or anything.
I don't know. Let's state a couple of facts. I grew up in Tennessee. I went to the University of Tennessee. I spent most of my career in Alabama. I think it's just a convenient thing, and frankly, it doesn't bother me at all. And I mean, if I show up every day in a crimson blazer and start singing "Yay Alabama," then maybe it's an issue. But I think my record on Alabama is pretty much out there for anyone to see. I just think for certain fan bases, it's just the only thing they can come up with. I don't know why it really makes anyone feel good or better, but that's fine.
It doesn't bother personally, and it's really not their business.
Well, I mean, I think maybe it is. When you're a public figure and you do a show like this, I think you can't hide whatever you are. But I really try not to wear my fandom here. Am I happy Alabama is doing well? Sure, but I wouldn't be crying if Tennessee won the national championship either.
Well, like I said, I'm a bleed orange Tennessee fan,
sure.
But I'm also an SEC guy.
Well, that ultimately is what we do here. Yeah,
and I'm glad to see Alabama doing well. I wish it was us, but right now it's not.
No, I get it, but I just think when you're in trouble in an argument, the easiest thing to do is to say you're an Alabama fan. By the way, if Alabama was in Arkansas's position, and I was talking about how great the program was, then maybe it would be a fair argument. But Alabama has ruled college football for the last 9 years, so let's just face up to it and move on to another. Not saying this to you, but when someone starts screaming about my fandom, I think I didn't go to school there. I mean, there's no getting around that. Unless I decide to go back to school now and get a degree from somewhere else, I'm going to forever be, and I'm proud of it, by the way, a Tennessee graduate.
Well, I would be. I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college, but I've got a couple of sisters that graduated from there. And my family's always been big Tennessee. But personally, to me, and like I said, I've watched the show and listened to your program on the radio for many years now, and to me, you're just a sports journalist who has a radio and TV show, and in doing so, you're just professional, in my opinion.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Thank you for saying that. And by the way, I mean, if I had a replica of Big Al behind the desk, it still wouldn't make any difference. But I think when you do a show like this, you're pretty much out in the open, and everyone went somewhere or didn't go anywhere. I think everyone knows where I went. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go to Ed in South Carolina. Hello, Ed.
Hey, Paul. How you doing today, bud?
We are doing great.
You have a great show, and I don't care if you're prejudiced or not. It doesn't matter. You do a great job. You really, really do.
Thank you very much.
But I got a hole-in-one last week, by the way.
Did you really? Give me the details.
161 yards, 6 iron, right in the hole, no problem.
That I like, but I don't want to act like I know what I'm talking about, but I have one in my life, and my wife has two, and she doesn't even play golf anymore.
Well, I know. The only problem with that, my bar bill is $187.
Really?
Yeah, well, it was in a league thing, league situation.
I see, okay.
That's backwards, Hey, what I called about was Big Ten, all right? I was born and raised in Kentucky, all right? And we moved to Columbus, Ohio in the 70s, lived there for 30 years, back in the Woodies days, all right? Now, of course, coming from Kentucky, football was nothing. So we get invited to the neighbor's house one night for a football game. That's when they played. They were at UCLA. I'll never forget this. And a Buckeye hit one of the UCLA players, broke his collarbone and jaw and nose, and the kid was hurt. Now, he was hurt. People sitting there cheering. They're cheering about it.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, a good hit is a good hit, right? No problem with that. But they were cheering about it, okay? And these Big Ten fans, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, they're just terrible. There's a couple of bars down here that they have, a Buckeye bar, they got a Penn State bar, they got a Michigan bar. You can't even go to them on game day, and these people are ridiculous, And I don't know. Everybody likes good, clean football, all right? But you don't cheer when somebody gets hurt.
Never.
I know. And that's when I lost my enthusiasm. I guess the right word. I don't know what the right word for Ohio State and for the whole Big Ten. Now, Northwestern people they are wonderful. They really are. They're just glad to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they don't know anything about winning. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but man, it's just awful. Saturday in the North in Big Ten country is terrible with those three teams.
So those three teams are Michigan,
Penn State,
and
Ohio State.
We have an Ohio State. We have a Michigan. We have a Penn State fan in the booth. Is that true, John Hayes?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. But you
don't want to talk about it.
They've come down a little bit the last couple of years, last few years, since all the tough problem they had up there, But they're still just
Ed. Hold on a second, Ed. Explain to me. John was obviously not paying attention. Tell him what you just told me, briefly, without about Penn State fans.
They used to be absolutely terrible. They really did, but they've come down a little bit the last few years since all the problems there.
Used to be terrible?
Huh?
Is that what you're saying? Penn State fans used to be terrible, Ed?
They're terrible. They have an Ohio State and Michigan. They're awful. They're awful.
Well, you're talking about the attitude or their fandom? Because Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, they get about 100,000 people to go watch a football game. That, to me, is a good fan. You're talking about the attitudes, the way they treat other people?
Attitude.
Gotcha.
Attitude.
Right. Well, at least we don't put other fan bases down.
The hell you don't. You cannot go to a bar with Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State fans and enjoy the game. It's always somebody else's fault. It's the referee. If the quarterback has a bad day, pull the quarterback. They were terrible. They're terrible.
Well, I guess we're just going to disagree with that, Ed. I don't know what to tell you. I think most football fans are all like that. They're watching a game and there's a lot of knee-jerk reaction. Have you ever been on Twitter during a game when your team's losing and see what some of your friends are saying?
I don't do Twitter. I'm too old for Twitter,
Well, all right. So you're talking to your buds. Say your squad's losing, and you're talking to your buds. You're talking to your family. You've never been around people who have suggested maybe a change at the quarterback position, been critical of a head coach. No, doesn't happen.
No, not to the extent that they do. No, not to the extent that they do.
Okay,
it's just terrible.
I agree with you. They're terrible, Ed.
Just terrible.
At least we agree on somebody agrees with me.
Yeah, thank you for the call. You don't try to argue with a Big Ten fan.
By the way, Michigan and Ohio State fans are terrible. I agree.
Everybody's terrible, but the SEC, you know that, John. Ron is in Pennsylvania. How are you, Ron?
Hey, Paul. How are you?
We are great. Thank you for the call.
In reference to this last caller saying how bad Penn State fans are, back in, I think it was around 2012, I'm a diehard Alabama fan who lives an hour from State College, and I went up to the Penn State game, and we kicked their ass, but, I mean, Penn State fans were extremely respectful. So I don't know what he's talking
let's
about.
Let's end this debate. I've always found Penn State fans to be among the best I've ever dealt with, and I've been to State College a couple of times. I've been around them, but listen, everybody has a bad experience somewhere. Whether it can happen getting a cup of coffee, it can happen in a football game, it can happen anywhere in the country.
My original call, I want to say two things. Number one, the other day I was watching. People were wondering what to watch during the A-Day on Saturday.
Yes.
To me, it's all about we replaced the entire secondary, including Nickelback. Deontay Thompson, he helped out a lot during the playoff. But that's what you need to watch. Saban will have it figured out by the LSU game. But the secondary is the key. And number two, just my opinion, if Tua would have started from game one last year, we would have run the table. Tua needs to start. And that's all I got to say.
Okay. I want to just think about this statement for a moment. Alabama fan just called up and said, if Tua had started last year, we would have run the table. Alabama lost one game and won the national championship. Not enough, apparently. We will take a break. More to come after this.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Martin is up next. What do you say, Martin?
Hey, Paul. I wanted to take up for you for a second. I didn't call to do this, but I spoke to you probably the first time I ever called you, and people don't realize that Paul Finebaum has paid his dues. If you can go back and look at an old Birmingham News write-up by Paul Finebaum, he was probably getting death threats because he was cutting Alabama to pieces with that typewriter, and he's come a long way. And he has a right to pull for Alabama, Tennessee, or Vanderbilt, whatever. But the reason
thank you, Martin. I appreciate you saying that. And I that is true, by the way.
The reason I called was about Matt at the beginning of the show. I would like to remind him, and not to make excuses, that Alabama had 30 injuries at any given time last year and still won the national championship. And that's a boatload right there in itself. And I think if we got him to sit down and have a couch session with Jim and Larry, I think he could be straightened out. And as far as second chances, I don't know if he's ever needed one or not, but he will now to get back on the Paul Finebaum show. But last but not least, he needs to sit back and put the headphones on, close his eyes and lay his head back and listen to a song called When a Blind Man Cries by Deep Purple.
Ooh. Deep Purple. Way back when. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. How about Vance up next in Dawsonville, Georgia?
Been a while, Paul.
Home of Bill Elliott.
Yeah, that's the great claim to fame here, other than it being called Bill. You know what that means. A lot of rednecks up here. Paul, I'm going to have to go along a little bit, talk about Matt just a little bit, and I also want to ask you a question after that. There's one thing that Matt and Tom from Columbus and Jeff from Chicago all have in common. Diarrhea of the mouth.
Agree.
You know, and here's something else, Matt. I don't want to be historical here, but history matters. Just take a look at how many teams from the Southeastern Conference have been represented in the national championship since the University of Georgia won one. And you might be shocked a little bit at why Alabama and other teams might carry a little more oomph than you guys. And I'm a lifelong Georgian my entire life, Paul. But here's something I was just wondering what you think about. I never went to college. I chose someplace else called the University of Paris Island. But here's what I'm wondering. If you had a guide in my lifetime, in all the decades, and I think you can help me here because I'm not perfect, but I believe in all but one decade of my life, the University of Alabama has won a national championship, even though they played for one in '89. I don't believe they won one in the '80s.
Yes, they did. They won. No, they didn't. Excuse me. They won 60s, 70s. There was 79. They did not win one in the 80s. They obviously won in '92, and the rest. Yeah, you're right about that. You're 100% correct.
So, as you can take a picture of this, Matt, which I think you ought to do this. Go into some branch of the service, and you'll have a squad of 4 platoons being taught to march. But in front of that platoon will be a guide on, and he'll have the platoon flag. Now, what you'll have in those other 4 squads is all the other SEC teams. But the guy with the guide, his guide's going to say simply SEC, because Alabama has been the flagship for the South all my life. They've always been there, and they deserve the respect that they've earned. And you, by the way, Matt, if you're a true Southerner, then your mother and father let you down because you sure don't talk like one.
Thank you, Vance. I appreciate it and appreciate your service as well. Drew is in New Jersey. Drew, go right ahead.
Hey, Paul. I called yesterday. I remember that. So today my questions were about more rivalries. I'm always into, rivalries, you know? And this is about baseball and softball because, I don't pay too much attention about baseball and softball. So, it's going to be, it's going to be about baseball and softball. So, who do you say is the biggest rivalry with any random team? South Carolina.
So we're talking about baseball and softball here?
Yeah.
I'm going to bring Danny Brams in a little bit here to help out because he covers a lot more baseball and softball than I do. Danny, what about South Carolina in baseball?
South Carolina baseball?
They have a lot of rivals.
They who's their biggest rival?
Within the SEC.
Well, because there is Clemson.
Yeah, there is Clemson. I would say probably everybody's rival in the SEC right now in baseball is Florida. Yeah. I mean, the Gators are the standard bearer for the conference right now. I think they're still ranked number 1, if I'm not mistaken, in the country.
They are.
And, that's who everybody's chasing
right now. Okay, there you go.
For sure.
Next question, Drew.
Well, isn't Florida and Vanderbilt a pretty big rival? They
are in baseball. I remember John and I were down there about 2 or 3 years ago that we had a Florida-Vanderbilt series. Vanderbilt, I think, was one in the country, or Florida was one, and it was a big deal. But I would say Florida and LSU are huge rivals. They played for the baseball championship last year. Florida's pretty much got everyone. But as Danny said, they're so good in baseball right now that everyone wants them.
Florida's good in every athletic. They're amazing in basketball. They're okay in football. I wouldn't really consider them a good football team. But baseball and softball, amazing. How's their track team? I don't pay attention to that, at all.
I think you were right the first time. They're good in everything.
Yeah, except for football.
I wouldn't say they aren't good in football. They won 2 national championships in 2006 and 2008. They played for the SEC again in 2009, and they were in the championship game 2 years ago and 3 years ago. That's not bad.
Also, another thing related to recess today, I got super mad at this kid because the score was 60-61. I was about to make a layup, but he wasn't even there. And I was talking some things about him like he's not good at basketball. And then right at the end, he pushed the basketball out of my hands and we lost. And I just got so mad.
Should have taken care of the basketball, Drew.
Oh, yeah. And also, a kid on our team made a half-court shot.
So I don't want to harp on the negative here, Drew, but how'd you lose the ball?
Kid just slapped it out of my hand, so we lost.
Now, this is the same kid you had said wasn't good in basketball?
Yeah, so I was kind of like bothering him and all that.
So you were taunting him you have taunted him in the past by saying he wasn't any good, right?
Yeah. But
is there a reason why you did that, Drew?
Yeah, because he was always interfering. You know, he wasn't really playing the basketball game out there.
Yeah.
So you know, if he was like interfering and missing shots, I just tell him to get out. You know, because you know you don't want anyone interfering when you're playing a competitive game. You know.
Yeah, maybe in the future you shouldn't taunt your opponents.
Yeah, that's never good. But
so what? So Drew, you're 10 years old. You're 10 years old, right?
Yeah.
What did you take away from that loss? What did you learn from it?
I just learned that it's just we're starting a new season. It's just like the first time again that, you know, you're gonna learn from it, and hopefully we win tomorrow.
What did you learn from it, though? Now, don't give me a cliche. What specifically did you take away?
What do you mean by take away?
Well, I mean, you had a defeat. You let your team down. You gave the ball up. What did you learn from that experience?
I learned
what are you more
never
inspired to do or motivated to do in the
I
future?
should pass the ball, but I was wide open, so I didn't really learn much.
Of course.
But, you know.
Was anyone open? Where were you on the court when you lost the ball?
Right next to the basket. That's the worst that can happen.
Okay, so you had an easy shot.
Yeah, I did.
And you were thinking about the shot, right?
Yeah.
And you were thinking about celebrating the shot, right?
Yes.
So you forgot that there were other people out there that were playing against you.
You know the kid that made a half-court shot, you know, we didn't celebrate?
Yeah, you watch too much SportsCenter.
You're right, I watch it every single morning.
Hey, Drew, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
All right, you too.
Didn't mean to beat you up on it, but, I mean, you're thinking about making the shot. You forget that there are actually defenders out there. Of course, you don't see that much when you watch the NBA. We will take a break. More to come. Mike Griffith will join us from Knoxville shortly. More of your phone calls, more of your experiences on the court.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flip.
And welcome back. Glad you're here. Let's head to Knoxville and bring in Mike Griffith to talk about a lot of things, especially Philip Fulmer. Mike, great to see you again. And a year and maybe 2 months ago, we were talking about the hiring of another athletic director. He's long gone. Philip is on the job since early December, and based on what you're telling us, things are going quite well. Good afternoon.
Yeah, a lot of stability with Philip Fulmer, Paul. And why would we be surprised with that when you consider Philip Fulmer's background, 17 years as a head coach and 31 years as an assistant here at Tennessee. I mean, no one knows the lay of the land on the University of Tennessee campus like Philip Fulmer. No one understands the state. No one understands the challenges that Jeremy Pruitt faces. And so it's really been a comfortable transition to Philip Fulmer, and it's really had a calming effect. And when you think about everything that Tennessee's been through, you know, you might think their hair would be on fire after this 26-day coaching search went awry and the whole Greg Schiano drama and Mike Gundy playing him like a fiddle and the NC State coach doesn't even want the job, and you end up with Philip Fulmer on December 1, and 6 days later you hire a head coach. You got less than 2 weeks to put together an early signing class. It would seem like a very dramatic and trying time, yet with Philip Fulmer's steady hand overseeing all of this, there's kind of a calm here in Knoxville, even though the season may be a little bit of a storm. There's some challenges, but you just get the feeling with Philip Fulmer in charge that Tennessee's found its way.
We know about his past. Certainly, he understands the territory. But what specifically is he doing, Mike, to calm everyone down and also to aid the new coach?
Well, number one, what he's doing to aid the new coach is he's giving Jeremy Pruitt everything he needs to be successful because he understands. He knows. He was there when Doug Dickey kind of opened up the pocketbook. You know, if there was one thing that Johnny Majors had a hard time with, it was getting enough money to pay all the assistants. And that was something that Philip Fulmer was able to do. And because Tennessee was able to loosen the purse strings and pay those assistant coaches, they had a great deal of continuity. Now, there were some different coordinators, obviously. David Cutcliffe left for the Ole Miss job, and Randy Sanders was promoted. But if you look at the defensive staff that John Chavis had and the number of years those guys stayed together, I mean, that's the same message, the same system. It's great for player development, the relationships with the players, that lessens the attrition. Now that Philip Fulmer's come in and he's basically said to Jeremy Pruitt, tell me what you need. Tell me how it is at Alabama. Tell me how it is at Georgia. Tell me how it is at Florida State. That's why he hired Jeremy Pruitt. He wanted somebody that had seen a championship program up close, understood the blueprint, and said, hey, bring it here to Tennessee. I'm going to find a way to get you what you need to win.
Mike, let's get to the most important thing. All these other stories are great, and I think they sound good, and it's good that Philip is in charge. But what kind of football team is this going to be? What have you seen so far on the practice field?
You know, it's funny you say that. I was talking with Philip Sunday, and I said, boy, you brought a calming effect, and he kind of chuckled. I said, yeah, wait till October, right? There's some challenges, right? We don't really know a lot about the quarterback situation in the sense that the scrimmages have been closed to this point. We know this. Jared Garantano and Will McBride are the two returning quarterbacks. They were both recruited to play the dual threat type of offense, Butch Jones spread system. We know there's a 6'5", 240-pound quarterback by the name of Keller Crisp from Stanford who's en route to Knoxville. He'll be here end of May, early June. I think he's going to be the guy because of his experience in a pro-style offense that Tennessee is switching to. So you've got a new quarterback coming in, albeit a senior, a grad transfer, but still a new offense, a new quarterback. And then defensively, there's some challenges. Jeremy Pruitt wants to play press man coverage. He's been able to get away with it at Alabama, at Florida State, and at Georgia. He's been a part of 5 national titles. He's had national championship talent. At Tennessee, he doesn't have that on defense. So I think we got to see what happens when push comes to shove. Is Tennessee really going to try and play press man against West Virginia on September 1st? Because if they do, we know the Mountaineers can line up the scoreboard like a pinball machine.
Talking here to Mike and Mike, let's talk more about the quarterback situation because we know who's on campus, but give us some more information on what we think or you think is yet to come.
Well, Keller Crisp was 11-2 as a starter at Stanford, but he did lose his starting job. He's a guy who doesn't have a lot of mobility, but he's accurate. He's got a strong arm. But I think more than anything else, Paul, we talked about Philip Fulmer being steady and providing leadership. I think that's what a guy like Keller Crisp can do. I think it's more than just the talent. I think it's the experience. I think it's what he can bring to the locker room. I think it's the know-how in a pro-style offense that, quite frankly, is not going to be that complicated, but you've got to have a guy back there that understands what everybody's job is and can pull the trigger, get rid of the ball quickly. And I think Tennessee has some playmakers on the perimeter. I like what they've got in the backfield. I know Jeremy Pruitt's not impressed. He's used to 225 and 230-pound NFL running backs. Tennessee doesn't have that, but they got a pretty talented guy by the name of Ty Chandler who's a home run threat. The key is, can they build an offensive line to give Keller Crisp some protection? I think Keller Crisp comes in, provides the stability and leadership, and if Tennessee can protect this guy, I think they'll go to a bowl game this season.
Of course, this young man comes from California. He's highly recruited. I think his uncle is the Paul Chryst, the coach at Wisconsin, so he knows the territory. In terms of the schedule, and I realize the most important thing is the spring game, but Tennessee fans are fired. Everyone's fired up, Mike. Are you hearing any? What's a realistic expectation for Jeremy Pruitt in his first year?
I think 6 or 7 wins realistically would be a good season because of the schedule, Paul. And, you know, look, other than West Virginia, I know they got some pushovers. East Tennessee State's not going to beat them. Charlotte's not going to beat them. UTEP is one of the worst teams in college football. So there's 3 automatic wins. And, you know, you can say what you want about Kentucky and Missouri being in Knoxville. Those teams have gotten better. The East has gotten a little bit more competitive. I mean, we saw Kentucky beat Louisville just a couple of years ago in a bowl game. I think they had a Heisman Trophy quarterback. So the East isn't a bunch of pushovers like they maybe have been in the past. It's not the SEC West yet, but I think 6 wins is realistic because of that difficult stretch, Paul, and I'll remind everybody, and certainly the Tennessee fans know about it, Georgia and Florida back-to-back weeks, and those are 2 rivalry games that are going to take a lot out of you. You get a week off to catch your breath, and then you got to play at Auburn and Alabama in back-to-back weeks, and then at South Carolina. a program that's really risen up and kind of been a pain in Tennessee's side. Those South Carolina-Tennessee games the last 4 or 5 years have been very contested. Muschamp doing a good job with the Gamecocks.
No doubt. In terms of the spring game, I've heard Jeremy Pruitt talk about expectations for what's in the stands. He was here 2 weeks ago trying to generate some excitement. Will we see a big crowd Saturday?
Well, the weather's going to be nice, and that's always important for spring games. The price is right. It's free. There will be no autographs, so maybe that might discourage some families from bringing their kids out. But if you want to get a glimpse of what Tennessee football is going to look like, it's going to be a good opportunity. I think a realistic crowd is probably going to be 40 to 50,000. These spring game numbers somehow always end up 15 or 20,000 more than what looks like in the stands. But he's going to play ones versus twos, so you're going to see an actual game. It's not going to be one of these modified scoring systems where only the head coach knows what's going on. You're going to see the first team offense and the second team defense play against the second team offense and the first team defense. And I'd love to break it down for you, but we don't know who's first and second team yet. They haven't put out a depth chart. They won't even let the players tell you what their weights are when we interview them. So Pruitt doing everything he can to keep everything behind the orange curtain. But next Saturday, I think we're all going to see. And here's the thing. They may look good, but they're playing against each other. So keep that in mind.
Be a better result than most of the season. Mike, thanks for coming on, as always. Great to see you.
You bet, Paul. Thank you.
Good stuff. Spring game Saturday afternoon. You'll see it on the SEC Network. We are up against a break. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back. Glad you're here on a Tuesday. I was pushing the days a little bit. It's only Tuesday. Wishful thinking. Toby is in South Carolina. How are you, Toby? Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
We are doing great. Thank you.
Look, I used to have a radio show in Memphis, Tennessee back in 1980s at WMC Radio. Do you remember that?
I sure do. Grew up listening to it.
Well, I was Aunt Eloise Louise, the character that was on there, and had Dana Kirk, was the basketball coach there at Memphis at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew you worked. Did you work at the Commercial Appeal?
Actually, I never. I mean, I did some work for them when I was in college, but I never specifically worked for them. I've actually never worked in Memphis, other than growing up there.
Well, you knew Jack Eaton.
I knew Jack well, and grew up listening to him and loving everything he did.
Yeah, he was a real cool guy. I thought I might bring back some nostalgia for you because I lived there from 1979 to 1986, and was got to be a big Memphis State fan. That's when the USFL came in and Memphis had the showboats. You remember
that? Didn't Reggie White play for them?
Yes, he did, and Reggie and his wife became good friends of mine.
Oh, yeah.
And Reggie would come up and do the radio show with me at WMC. That was with WMC TV and AM and FM.
I remember that was on Union Avenue. I've been there many times.
Right across from Woody's. You remember Woody's?
I sure do. Listen, no, I grew up not that far from there. And, speaking of Jack, I didn't know when I was a kid. I mean, I would stand around after the games. Had no earthly idea. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know who I was. But later on, I got to meet him, and it was such a treat to meet one of your heroes as a young man, kid, I should say.
Well, I'm probably a little older than you. I'm 62, and but Jack was just a big figure there at WMC, and oh gosh, I loved Memphis. I miss it, but I got thinking. I knew you'd talked about it a lot. Oh, by the way, I want you to know I'm a Clemson fan, yet I spent many a days going to Tennessee football games because I met a couple of folks there in Tennessee, and I got to meet Johnny Majors for the first time.
Really?
And I told Johnny it was a football club meeting they had for the volunteers. And when I first met him, I said, I'm an Orange guy. He said, well, I appreciate you living in Tennessee. I said, no, I'm Clemson Orange. He looked at me and said, Toby, that's the wrong orange.
Johnny was great. He's still around.
And you remember the guy that did the PA system at the Tennessee Stadium, Neyland Stadium?
Oh, yeah. He worked at the radio. He owned a radio. He ran the radio station. Bobby somebody. What was his name?
I think it was Bobby Morty or something, but he did the hey, this is a great story, Paul. You're going to love this. I did some radio stuff for IVK as well.
Oh, sure.
Which Bobby managed.
Yeah, he was the manager of it was the biggest country, one of the biggest country stations in the country.
Oh, yeah. It was big. I mean, back in those days, country was real hot. I guess it's hotter now, but it ain't the country it was. But anyway, let me tell you a story about Bobby. I went down there to Neyland Stadium and was sitting in the game, and I asked Bobby, I said, he knew I was from South Carolina. And he said, Toby, ain't Clemson playing today? I said, yeah, Bobby, they are. I said, do y'all announce scores from other conferences? And at that time, he didn't. He said, no, we only do the SEC. I said, well, you're playing South Carolina. They had just joined the SEC.
By the way, I think his name was Bobby Denton.
Bobby Denton, that's it.
Yeah.
But I told Bobby, I said, listen, Clemson's playing Georgia Tech. If you announce their score over the PA system, you'll get a rise out of them Gamecock fans. Well, Paul, I'm sitting there with Mr. Dick, who owned WIVK.
Oh, sure.
And Bob, and of course, Bobby's up there in the booth. And all of a sudden, here comes Bobby going, and the Clemson Tigers have defeated South Carolina. And you could have heard the boos all across from the Carolina fans.
Wow! No, I knew all those guys. The Dick family. Bobby died a couple of years ago, and was a beloved figure in East Tennessee. Well, man, you brought back some memories today, Toby.
Well, I thought I might have. I mean, I love Tennessee. The years I spent there, and I was on the radio there at WMC. I was on radio at WSM in Nashville and WIVK.
Another
I had
great one.
little character thing I did, but. It was fun. I just thought if I could ever get through to you, I knew that you would kind of cherish and enjoy some of these memories I had.
Well, we need to get some characters on this show. We don't have enough, Toby.
Well, I did a voice called Ain't Eloise Louise.
And what's it sound like?
Well, let me tell you something, Paul. I would like to know one question. Did you find your pantyhose in the back of your car last night?
I don't remember.
Okay. It was just a takeoff of my aunt.
Hey, by the way, Toby,
hey,
that was really good.
You,
I mean, you got that voice down.
Well, you know, like I said, I'm retired now, but I enjoy watching your show every day. And
well, listen, you call back, and I cannot wait to talk to you again. That was fantastic. What a great voice. That used to be radio voices, not real characters, but make-believe characters. We are up against a break, thank goodness. More of your phone calls, and we got a few characters coming around in mere moments.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Put a little cherry on the top.
It was BYOG, bring your own guts.
This is the best
Do you hear me?
of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We welcome you back. One more hour to go, and you can give us a ring at 855-242-7285. We had some fun tonight, and we will try to continue that for the next hour or so. Larry is on the air.
What's up, Jack? What's going on? I see my man in there, Big Dan, brother. I can understand him, Paul. You put that mark in there, him and Big
Yeah, I mean, Danny, I think, is from where?
Jipper.
Where are you from, Danny? Texas, somewhere?
Grew up in Utah, but claimed Texas since I got there as quick as I could.
You're the first person I've ever met that grew up in Utah.
Same here.
Hey, yeah, I mean, listen to the man. You can understand him. I mean,
well,
like
you know the difference between Danny Bram and the other guy? He's not a Yankee. He's not a Yankee. He's not arrogant. He's not a know-it-all, and he's not a Notre Dame fan.
Well, let me ask this question. Actually, when you're from Utah, where are you from? You're from the West. You're not from the South. You're not a Midwestern guy.
Pretty far. Utah's pretty far west, John.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I know
it would be called the Intermountain West, I believe, is what they call it.
So the Mountain West. Okay, perfect. Which I haven't spent a lot of time there. Larry, you've been out to the Mountain West?
John, nobody has.
Yeah, so get off the subject, Big Ten, John. Quit talking over me.
Get off the phone,
Matt.
Larry.
Hey,
We didn't ask you to
Matt.
call.
Hey, Matt, you didn't, but hey, it's toll free, Jack. So check it out.
Hey, I like this, Larry and John going at it. That's a new thing on this show.
Yeah, wait till the 12th. He ain't gonna show up for that golf tournament. I mean, I'd love to have Matt there to be my caddy so I could slap him around every time he said Bama. I'd knock him upside the
Hey, Larry,
head.
I mean, is that really? Is that all you can do? Is talk about how you're going to whip up on John when you had you had an opportunity and you shucked like
a witness. I got a witness to come on this show and verify what I said. Remember her name?
I do.
That's right.
Okay, Larry, I want to put you through a little test real quick, since we're on the subject of geography.
Wow.
How do you spell Utah?
Well, we got to go through this spelling,
W-T-A-W.
Utah, Larry.
Why?
No, Larry, E-U, E-W.
Can you tell us which states border Utah, Larry? Which states border Utah?
Alabama.
No, quit, Paul. You messing me up. I know all this stuff, but you messing my brain up. Out there toward Texas.
No. Think Nevada.
I got the answer if you need it, Larry.
I was going to say that, Paul, and you're messing me up, man. You got my train of thought.
Larry, I know you've been there. Las Vegas, Utah.
Yeah, there you go.
Sin City.
Larry, I would advise you not to go to Utah.
I spelled it right, so I can go. How about that, Jack?
Let's one more time, Larry. I'm going to spot you the U. You finish the word for me.
Crap. You.
Utah. U.
T-A-W-U. Utah.
Use the no, Larry. Larry. It's an easy word. U is the first letter. What's the second letter?
T. T would be W. Tall.
It's really hard for a W to follow a U and a T, but go ahead. UTW. UTWAU. My God. You just mad. That's it. UTWAU. Danny Brams, you're from there. Is that correct? UTWAU.
Right.
That is not correct, unfortunately, Larry.
Come on, big
You know I love you. You know I love you, Larry. You're my guy. Someday we're gonna crack those coldies together.
Why don't Brams? Why don't we set up a trip? Me, you, and Larry. We go out to Salt Lake City.
That'd be fantastic.
And we'll hit the slopes, Larry.
Larry, just for your future edification, unless you're ever in a spelling bee at a bar, it's UTAH.
Oh, where's the U at? U-B-A-W-H.
No, Larry. It is U-T-A-H.
Where's the all at the end? Utah. T-A-W should be tall. I mean, if I spelled something...
you're saying it's U-T-A-W-L? Utah?
A-W, yeah.
It's not in Alabama. Now, Larry, there is a Utah, Alabama spelled E-U-T-A-W. That's where the dog track is.
Oh, that's why I got messed up on. Yeah. Okay, well,
that's
I got
Utah
that right.
in Greene County, but this is Utah, which is a state in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, let's move on to the real thing about this guy Matt, Paul. I want to rough him up. I'm tired of listening to him. You're like the president of the United States, Trump, and he's like Comey. I mean, y'all.
Oh
that's how
no,
y'all,
he's like James Comey.
He's a liar. Yeah, he's a big fat liar.
Lying Jim Comey. Where have I heard that before?
Yeah. He's a big liar.
Now, Larry, did you see Jim Comey's interview?
Yeah, man, I could be a political guy, man. I'm telling you, I can break it down.
Okay, Larry, just for the fun of it, to give you a chance to redeem yourself. Let's say we're at whatever. What's your favorite news network?
Fox, baby.
I'm shocked. I don't know why I saw that. Let's say we're at Fox News. I'm sitting here with Sean Hannity, my good friend. We share an attorney together. And
Cohen wasn't his lawyer.
Comey has... I like the idea of Michael Cohen as a lawyer, though.
Yeah.
So, okay, Comey has just finished his interview, and Sean has to go take a phone call, and I'm stuck on the set. And I say, Larry, your reaction to the interview?
Now, just interviewed was Comey.
Yeah, we just got through watching the interview with Comey, and I'm getting your reaction.
My
so,
reaction.
So, Larry, what is your reaction?
I would jump up and push my chair. I hope it be on rollers. I'd push that thing as far as I could kick it, and I'd say, what a moron. What a two-faced lying sapsucker. I said, there ain't no way that man, he just hurt the FBI, man.
Okay, Larry.
I mean,
okay, Larry, we got the message. We got you booked tomorrow morning on Morning Joe, 6:45.
All right, man, I would go, Jack. You think I'm kidding?
Hey, Larry, hold on 1 second, okay? Don't go anywhere.
You got Comey there?
No, we got the guy from Georgia on. If somebody can figure out.
Get out there, boy.
Hold on, Larry. Let me know when they're both. Matt.
Hey, Larry, you are stupid. You can't even spell Utah.
Hey, Goofy.
Hey, you moron. Larry, hey, Jack,
Hey, guys, one at a time. Hey, Larry. We're going to do this civilly. This is not too. I am going to control this. I am the moderator here. You have been, and Matt, you have to bear with me. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond.
He can't even spell Utah. I mean, I'm sorry. You had to walk him through spelling Utah. I mean, what an idiot. I mean,
really?
What did he spell? How did he spell moron? Let's see if he can spell moron. Is he spelling M-O-R-O-N?
M-A-T-T, moron.
Larry, can't even spell Utah. Oh, my God.
Spell moron.
Can you spell IQ?
Can I spell what?
Can you spell IQ, Larry?
I can smell you. What do you mean, spell you?
Can you spell IQ?
I can do
spell
this.
IQ, Larry.
I can tell you don't have one. I'll tell you that.
Well, you can't spell Utah, so I don't know how you can tell anybody anything.
That's your IQ, that little pissant. That's your IQ, boy.
Larry, you can't spell Utah.
So what?
If you can't spell, how many letters are in Utah? 4?
Why do you keep on with Utah, man? You stunk. Somebody slap him in the head, get him going.
My 6-year-old little girl can spell Utah, Larry.
Oh, you can't spell Utah, boy. Hey, I'm the smartest man on the block. I can spell Utah. I'm from Georgia.
Hey, Larry, if I may interrupt here for a second, is that the best you've got for Matt?
No, he won't let me talk.
Come on, bring it, Jack. Bring it, Jack.
I think Matt is
we've been hold on. Hold on a second. We've been waiting for this for a couple of weeks, and Larry, you've got to do better than.
I'm fixing to. You gonna turn me loose?
Go ahead. It's all yours.
Matt, you shut up and sit down and listen, boy. Let me tell you something. Bama has broke your heart twice. Just like Paul said, you're a butt-hurt little whiny wimp. You can't grow up. You keep interrupting people, and you don't know how no civilization about yourself. I don't know how to spell Utah, but I wish your life was in Utah. I'll tell you that.
Matt, let the man speak. You had your time. I want to hear Larry here.
That's right. And you shouldn't even be in. You go to Utah. That's where you need to be. Because I'm going to tell you something. Georgia is a dud because we gonna whoop them again, Jack.
Okay.
Yeah, you wait, Bubba. Hey,
Okay, Larry. Down, Larry. Okay, I want to hold on. Only one person can talk at a time here. We're not doing any of that silly stuff like we usually do.
No,
I want to hear Matt respond now to Larry. Larry, no talking.
Okay. I'm too busy laughing. He's scared. They're scared of the dogs. Like I said, Kirby's going to bring it. Y'all don't, in a year, I mean, hey, Paul, if they move you to Atlanta, I hope they move you to Atlanta. It's going to be dog nation, baby. Kirby's going to bring it. We're bringing it, baby. Nick Saban's down. Y'all beat us by 2 points. I'm not butthurt. Y'all shouldn't even been in the playoffs. Y'all just make sure you beat Auburn next year. Y'all beat Auburn, where the punter can't brag and make fun of y'all. Y'all just beat Auburn, all right? Because we did.
Hey, Matt, I just have one question for you, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Larry's drunk. What's your excuse?
I'm coming home from work, Paul, and I know how to spell Utah.
Okay, we're done.
Okay.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Matt.
Go!
Okay, enough. Okay, slow down. Enough. Let me go into the. Thanks, Larry. Let me go into the booth here quickly. Danny Bram and John. Let's score this one. John, what do you got?
I've got Larry. It went all 12 rounds, no knockouts, but my scorecard reads Larry.
Yeah, I got to give it to Larry. Matt was just jab with the Utah thing, and we had already moved past it. So
we have.
I try to be neutral here, but I would have stopped the fight. I mean, Matt had nothing. I mean, Larry wasn't even paying attention. He was watching Andy Griffith while he was fighting this one.
But believe it or not, Paul, Larry had two quick-witted liners.
Yeah.
Matt just had the same material over and over.
Yeah.
You got to be better than that.
Matt got exposed there as a fraud.
Yeah.
We'll take a short break. Back with much, much more.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back to our program. Ben is in Jacksonville, Florida. Ben, thank you. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul. What's going on?
How you doing?
How you doing today?
We are doing great.
Yeah, man. So what's the big idea, man? You called me a serial killer right before you hung up on me yesterday.
I called you a serial killer?
Yes, you did.
What were you saying? I don't even remember this.
Dude, Paul, man, I've been calling you for dating advice, and I told you I met a girl, a Georgia girl, and then you're like, hopefully she doesn't realize she's dating a serial killer.
Well, that was kind of a joke, Ben. I don't think I would normally call somebody a serial killer unless they were like a serial killer, Wayne Gacy or someone like that.
Yeah, Paul. I mean, dude. I consider you a good friend of mine, dude. I call the show pretty often. I tell people, yeah, that's my friend, Paul Finebaum, and it was kind of hurtful that you said that to me, or about me.
Well, listen, I don't know how to make it up that I called you a serial killer. Can you just get over it, or do I need to send flowers?
No, man. You don't need to do that, but, so, anyway, you had, what's his face on from SEC Nation? Yeah, dude for Tennessee. Yeah, random guy.
Is anybody following this? Do we know who we're talking about here? Could you repeat that one again? We're all struggling to decipher.
I'm busy on 1-800-Flowers right now, making sure Ben gets some pansies.
Really?
Ooh, that was John Hayes, by the way.
Yeah, John Hayes. Mm-hmm. Anyway, yeah. So,
Ben, you sound kind of down tonight. What's the deal? Are you upset that you missed out on the phoner feud with Larry and Matt?
Dude, I can spell Utah. So, all right. Wow. I don't know. Larry is 3 sheets to the wind right now, but yeah. So I do want to talk about the quarterback issue at Tennessee. I don't know about Jerry Garantano. I don't know about the other guy. I don't think they're really going to fit the system with Jerry Pruitt and the graduate transfer that's coming in. I think he's going to be the starter, and I think Garantano is going to end up leaving just the same way as Jalen Hurd did, moving to Baylor, moving on, and going to try something new. So, do you agree with that, or
Listen, I need this. I want to see this Chris that Mike Griffith was so upbeat on. I remember when he played at Stanford. He's got experience. I think that's his basic calling card, but I can't tell you right now based on what I've seen.
Well, that's what we need at Tennessee is a quarterback that's experienced and ready to handle it. I mean, obviously he was playing in the Pac-12 or whatever, but the SEC is a whole different beast. But he's
got more experience than Jared does.
Yeah, definitely. Jared got smacked in the mouth and wiped clean last season, and so I would go with Kyler Chris over Jared Garantano any day, especially Jared Garantano was supporting the Greg Schiano hire he was all stoked about it on Twitter.
Well, listen, I think people have an opinion when their coach is about to be named. That was like 2 seconds away from being official. I'd rather a player come out and say, yeah, I thought that's a good hire versus I think it's a terrible hire. Never quick to jump on Twitter without having heard the official announcement. Go right ahead.
My goodness, Paul, what are you going to do to give us back the last 15 minutes of our life?
I don't know.
That's in your hands.
That boy Ben was really down. I mean, he was drinking some of what Larry was drinking.
Well, the last caller is a serial. He's a show serial killer.
I mean, Ben went from being a fun caller to just a downright poster child for manic depression.
Listen, hook him up with Millie. Millie loves arrangements. And then, listening to, I'll give Matt a pass on the phone feud, because he's new at this. But Larry did that incoherent babbling in Tuscaloosa, and you said I talked all the way through it. That's what Larry did.
You always
the whole
talk.
time.
You never stop talking.
That's not true, Paul. I mean,
I don't need to repeat this again, but I sat with. You're talking again. We sat together for 3 hours at some hamburger joint in Tuscaloosa with the guy from.
It wasn't just some hamburger joint.
You don't
hamburger joint.
Okay, let me finish at least a sentence, maybe the subject before I get to the predicate. We were sitting at a hamburger joint in Tuscaloosa for 3 hours, maybe longer, with the crew from The Daily Show and whatever Jordan Kleepelhopper, whatever the Comedy Central guy's name was. And we were trying to have a dialogue, and it was really a good idea until you decided to have uncontrollable diarrhea of the mouth. And we went out to the CVS
stupid.
and the Walgreens, and we gave you all the Kaopectate that they had, and you still haven't stopped.
I mean, you're not a producer. You're not an executor. You're not a writer or a script or anything. You're not even a good camera guy. You're just a show host. And you invited yourself. You elbowed your way into our conversation. And when Jordan is looking at I-Man, he says, I-Man, what do you think? And Larry's babbling. You would think that's when he wanted me to speak. And that's what I took from it. That's what he took
did you
from
see?
it.
Did you see anything that you said make it on the air, I-Man?
Do what now?
Did you see anything that you said that day make it on television?
None of it made.
Because it was so bad. I mean, you were so out of control that they went to New York and they said, we can't use this because there's one guy and we don't remember his name, and he never stopped talking for 3.5 hours.
It's mighty funny.
I was trying to help them. They asked me to fly down, take a day away from the show to try to host these guys, and you were uncontrollable.
Well, let's just break this down, because after you ran out on buying us lunch, which is kind of normal.
I didn't have to buy. I mean, the guy was giving you lunch, Larry. Remember that.
Before or after?
Well, Larry, I promise you, I'll send you the $295 that you were to spend on lunch that day.
You're stepping all over a good Paul. You know I wrote that.
The day I step over a good call with you will be a very cold day.
Well, wait a minute. Do you know what was said after everything kind of settled down? There was this guy in the back. He was a producer, and he looked around, and he walked up to me. He says, now I see why they brought you here. Yeah. Because you and Jerome were the only two clear-headed people in this room. Everybody
Jerome said maybe 4 words in 3 hours.
Larry from themselves. And you didn't do a good job, and it's because you didn't.
You know
do
what,
a good
Larry?
Job.
I keep calling you Larry because you remind me of Larry.
We could have been on TV in New York City, where all.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. The sound of silence, in case you were wondering. Simon and Garfunkel. We will take a break, mercifully, and come back for the final 30 minutes. Didn't realize he was a serial killer calling in a radio show.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flip.
Welcome back to the program. Greg is up next. Greg, thank you, and good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Paul. Thanks for taking my call. That was Ben was kind of painful to listen to. I guess he was trying to hold the phone and his cleavers in one hand.
He was a fun caller, but if he doesn't understand that we're joking around about stuff on the show, then he's got some learning to do.
That's right. I mean, he could be like Matt and Darriel, who are still upset with, Sherman burning Atlanta. So it's going to take them a while to get over the Alabama loss.
They aren't the only ones.
No. The reason why I wanted to call was I heard the first part of your show before I had to get on the road, and one of the things I like about your show is that, one, you let people come on and say basically what they want to, but you try to have a conversation with people even when they're being outlandish or outrageous. And the perfect illustration was when you talked to the guy from CFB Matrix.
Yeah, Bartoo.
And he was, he had some really neat stuff to say. Some of it I may not agree with, but it was interesting. And he, as you pointed out to Matt earlier today, he put a period at the end of the sentence and allowed you to then play off of what he said and move forward. So with conversation or dialogue comes conversation. And
listen, I mean, I realize it's your call, not meaning you, but at some point, our position here is to try to control and engage. And the two worst offenders on this program are Matt and Iman. I mean, they both. I mean, Iman. Matt's a newbie. Iman just doesn't know any better. He actually thinks he's making sense.
Well, I'll speak to the former. He, one of your callers said Matt wasn't raised right. And I don't know anything about that, but I do know that when you respect someone, you can have a conversation, okay? If you're just coming on to be the circus clown.
Yeah, and by the way, I will say this about Iman. Iman has been with the show forever. I mean, he has contributed over the years. He's just got into this bad habit of trying to be a comedian. Matt just doesn't have a game. He doesn't have any game. He's got one narrow argument that is specious, that Georgia is better than Alabama. And when he can't win that argument, he just starts throwing dirt against the wall. That's not even, it's one thing, Greg, when you throw stuff against the wall, and you see this every night on the cable channels, and at least you could, maybe that's true. There's almost nothing he says that's true. That could be in the wildest conspiracy theory yet remotely true.
Well, that's because he wears a tin hat on his head, in homage to M. Night Shyamalan. And Signs, remember that movie?
I do, yes.
Yes. So, but I have respect for Iman. We had our disagreements early on when I started calling, and we worked that out and all. But this Matt guy, he's just a bonehead, and you would be much more effective if you understood what witty repartee meant, or rapier-like wit, if he had a conversation with you instead of just trying to do this diarrhea-type narrative that he wants to engage in every day.
So true. Thank you very much, Greg. Can't believe it. We actually had a conversation on this show. Clarence is up next in Atlanta. Hello, Clarence.
Hey, what's up, Paul?
Oh, doing well. Thanks.
Yeah, as a Georgia guy, I had to respond to several things that's been said today and on this show. Matt and Darriel, first of all, do not represent, most of the Georgia nation. But what do they do represent that I cannot stand about in this state that I'm from? They make excuses instead of just using a loss or a failure into motivation and passion like champions do. Like, I take every loss serious, but at the end of the day, I'm not about to sit here and want to cry about it. What you do is you do what Clemson did when you have a true leader, like a Deshaun Watson. You take a loss, get over it, and you get back the team next year. You can't do nothing about the game. It's over.
It's over. You're absolutely
right. What you do? Deshaun lost that first year. He outplayed Alabama's defense, but Nick Saban made a great call. Alabama won. What happened the next year? Clemson won. I get so tired and just hearing all the stupidity out of Matt and Darriel about Nick Saban. He's the greatest college football coach of all time. Now, Bama fans could talk all the noise all they want to, Paul, But at the end of the day, if they wasn't worried about Georgia, they would be making everything a big deal, like a recruiting class. You've been have the number one recruiting class for several years, and now you still talk about Georgia has no one recruiting class? Why you keep worrying about Georgia if you see Georgia as nothing? You only keep talking about people who you don't respect. They're not talking about Florida. They're obviously talking about Georgia.
Well said. Hey, thank you, Clarence. I do appreciate your call. Let's continue with more phone calls. And Gator is up next in Memphis. Hello, Gator.
Hey, what's up, man?
How are you?
I was wanting to talk about the blue and orange game, and then I was wanting your intake about the Grimes and Jefferson. Are they going to be cleared to play for the season starts?
I don't have an answer for that yet. We'll keep checking on it.
Okay. I think Florida will be a force to be reckoned with in a couple of years. I'll hang up and listen to your show. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I think you're right about that. I completely agree. I think it will take a little time. It won't take forever. There are reclamation projects at 3 or 4 other schools that I think will take significantly longer. I know everyone thinks their team is back, but they're not. Florida needs a couple of pieces, and I think the quarterback piece is critical. I think some discipline and enthusiasm and a different level of energy and enthusiasm, which I do believe Dan Mullen has been successful with doing. Let's talk to Combo, who is up next. What do you say, Combo?
Can you hear me, Paul?
I can. You sound great.
All right. I want to talk to you about the tweets. First, I want to say something to I-Man. I-Man, I know you wanted to be the number one caller when you thought Jim was gone forever, but you can't be the number one caller if you're just a hater, or even if you just hate everybody except Alabama. Jim hates everybody, so that's part of his shtick. But back to the tweets. This is, better than anyone else's caller-driven show, and everybody's trying to get on and can't. But sometimes you can get on with a tweet, but I watch these tweets over and over and over and over, same tweet over and over again.
Combo, let me pause, because I know this may make me sound ignorant. I don't know how that works. Can somebody explain to me how the tweets at the bottom of the screen work? Because the man just said they're the same ones over and over again. Is that true?
No. We have about 3 or 4 different versions that do cycle.
We got a cycle. We have very hardworking, underpaid people in here who are monitoring the internet constantly for tweets, and they freshen it up when they can.
But Combo, we do have a complaint box on the corner down there in Cottondale. If you want to hop in your truck and submit a complaint, we'll be happy to field that for you.
I'll get in my boat and go down there. What I'm saying is, it's just a way that people can participate.
Well, Combo, I think it's a really listen. I'm sympathetic to you. I know that the guys in the other room they're closer to it, because I don't even know how it works. But I do think it is we encourage it every day. We want people to tweet us.
Certainly do.
And we think it's an important part of the show. It's when we're on television, which we are, obviously, I realize there's a lot of people around the country listening on the radio, but it's a visual medium, and I can see why your eye would be attracted to the bottom of the screen than to the right-hand portion of it.
Well, it's just a way. It's a way that a lot of us, that's the only way we could get through.
Sure, I get it.
And you keep seeing it over and over and over, and they can say that it cycles, and I understand it cycles, but it doesn't cycle enough. Is that...
I think that's a fair criticism, Combo, and I'm going to speak to... I'm actually going down to the complaint box myself today, and I'm going to stuff about 100 complaints in there.
And Greg, thank you for that rapier-like wit. Wow, that was... that came... You want to explain that to everybody? Never mind. We're from Alabama. And by the way, talking about people from Alabama, talking about Georgia, I don't give a crap about Georgia, so keep that in mind.
I hear you, Combo. Thank you very much. Millie, have you ever tweeted the show?
No, I can't, because I don't have any way of tweeting. If I'm going to say anything, I'd have to send it to you. And
okay. Millie, do any of your friends have internet service?
I've got a couple of friends who do, but I don't think that they are not too terribly interested in the Paul Finebaum show, which I do not understand.
Do you know, Millie, that there is John may have to help me here, there's a fake Millie account out there?
Really?
Yes.
Do you know something? I don't read your tweets as much as I enjoy watching your faces all of your faces.
What's the name of that account? There's a fake Millie account. I don't remember the name of it, but I've seen it.
It's called Not Millie.
It's called Not Millie.
Oh, well, I'm going to have to read the things at the bottom. You know what really gets me is that what I've been watching for the last little while about your show and everything is that so many people get on the show and they sort of badmouth you, and I don't really like that too much. If they can't think of something nice to say about you.
You know, I tend to agree with you, Millie. I think there should be a new rule here. And I remember when I was a kid, my mom said the same thing. You know, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. Did your mom say that to you?
Well, she used to, yeah.
I realize she's probably not around anymore. My mom's not either, but she would probably,
she's up in heaven. Both.
Yeah, she just actually tweeted me from heaven.
Yeah, both of your mom and mine's up in heaven. They're probably having a good conversation right now.
My mom's having a Tom Collins right now.
Yeah, who knows? Anyway, I just wanted to say that I think your show is truly the best show that's ever been on television.
I think
and I know I said
and I think Johnny Carson and Jerry Seinfeld and all the other shows that have come after it or before it, I should say, would probably agree with you.
Yeah, I agree, too. Anyway, it's so nice to be able to talk to you today. I tried yesterday, and I was busy. I had to do some other things, and so I couldn't get in.
Millie, if I had John come out to Missouri and set you up with an iPad, would that help you be interested in tweeting?
Yeah, but somebody would have to show me how to do something.
Oh, there's nothing to do.
That's how come I would need somebody to show me, and I think John's the next one teacher.
Brams, are you available anytime soon?
Yeah, I mean, my family doesn't need me to hang out or anything like that, right? I've got plenty of time to head out there to Rolla.
Bram,
sure.
Listen, I'm not in charge of anything other than walking, but if you wouldn't mind, you're here tomorrow, I know.
You know something?
But maybe Thursday and Friday you could head out to Missouri. I'd prefer if you drive. We're a little tight right now on the budget.
Okay, what about this? If I came to Charlotte and you guys could show me in the TV station?
Well, no, you really need to do it in the comfort of your own home.
It gives me a chance to see what that station. I'm still curious.
Yeah, well, you better hurry, Millie. Unfortunately, we're up against a break. We will take this time out back with the remaining moments of the show.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Put a little cherry on the top.
And we welcome you back. Glad you're here. Danny Brams tells me that we had just, even though we only have a couple of minutes left in the show, we've loaded some new tweets. Is that correct, Danny? Just for combo. There you go. Jay is up next. How are you, Jay?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
We are doing great, too. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, this is what I want to say about the Jalen Hurts field in the tour. If you listen to the national championship game, the commentator said in the second half the plays have changed. If you go back and look at the A-Day game last year, they had tight end drags, they had seam routes. That's the way you beat when they stack the line. I'm a former quarterback. I'm a 4-star quarterback.
I'm listening to every word you said. You're making a lot of sense. What happened to you, Jay? Okay. We were about to make some headway there. Sorry we lost you. David is in Florida, and you're on the air. Go right ahead, David.
Dave, yeah, Paul, you're a first-time caller. Love your show.
Thank you very much.
I was just thinking about Jim. Nobody's ever seen him or anything, but that caller that called in a while ago from Memphis, that was a radio personality.
Yes.
That's done some voices. Maybe he's Jim.
I'll tell you what, he did have a very good imitation, though. I don't know what he was imitating, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah, but he could have imitated Jim, possibly. Just to throw that in there.
You know, I've always been interested, David, is when Jim doesn't call in, what is he doing? You think Jim's like watching some network right now other than ours?
Thank you for listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast. The Paul Finebaum Show airs weekdays on the SEC Network, beginning at 3 Eastern.